You're going to want to pass this test if you do want to win your free Aputure MC, and you're going to want to pass this test in order to earn your LinkedIn certification. And like we said before, one lucky winner will be able to win an Aputure MC 12 light production kit. You will be chosen, this lucky winner will be chosen from the top scoring percentile of all ALC tests. So make sure, if you want to win this, try and aim for that 100%, that 99 and 100%. That's where you're going to get that ALC prize of the MC 12 light production kit. But to go on real quick, let's back it up. Again, for everyone who doesn't know, this is Aputure Lighting Certification. We started this back in 2020. We started this back in 2020 because everyone was forced to go home, and we wanted to figure out one way to get everyone to join in on the conversation and join in with Aputure so you can know all about these Aputure products. We wanted to share the knowledge with everyone so everyone could become an Aputure expert. It's not just me this time, it's not just Ian, it's not just Ted. Everyone can be an Aputure expert. So today is kicking off week 2. Instead of doing 4 weeks like we did last year, we're doing 2 weeks of highly condensed information this year. Today, we're starting with our Los Angeles stream, and then we're going to go to Shenzhen, Christchurch, New Zealand, Singapore. We're going to hit Sao Paulo in Portuguese. Tiago's doing it in Portuguese and in Spanish. So the next day, he's going to be doing it in Spanish. And at the end of the week, we're going to be heading it off in Tokyo with our good friend Wally Yoshimura. So again, to recap, today we're going to be doing the 100-question ALC test to earn the Aputure Lighting Certification. For everyone who passed the quiz in this past week, from week 1, you have all received, we have sent out emails to everyone who has passed the quiz. If you did not receive an email from Aputure regarding passing the ALC quiz and saying that you received your free M9, unfortunately, that means you did not pass. If you did have an issue submitting your email, if you think that for whatever reason you submitted your email incorrectly, feel free to email community@aputure.com. However, in pretty much 99.9% of circumstances, if you did not receive an email, that means unfortunately you did not pass the threshold for this past week. However, I will mention we had an amazing turnout of 1,500 participants taking the ALC 30-question quiz, and I'll let you know, so many people got a perfect score, more than I ever anticipated, and we ended up giving away about 900 M9s last week. It was absolutely insane. The turnout was tremendous, and we hope that the turnout this week is just as good. We want to give away a bunch of MCs. We want to have everyone get their Aputure LinkedIn certifications, and ultimately, we want to grow the Aputure family and have everyone become Aputure experts. So again, the test will be live for 24 hours. So even if you missed this stream, from the end of this stream, it will be live for 24 hours. And the same thing is true for each of the streams from each of the regions. So for example, if you take it in New Zealand later, 24 hours from when that launches, then that will be the end of that test, and so on and so forth for each of the tests. Each of the tests will have a 24-hour clock on them. So you'll have plenty of time to take the test, to study, to review, to go back to last week's presentation, because we're going to be breezing through some of the products that we talked about last week. And you'll have plenty of time to basically get all your ducks in a row and take the test to your fullest potential. I want to make sure that you're an Aputure expert, not just under crunch time, but that with time to think about everything, you are really an Aputure expert. 2 things to note at the bottom of this slide, you can see, so the Shenzhen China stream has been moved about 7 hours later. So instead of 12 p.m. CST, it is 7 p.m. CST. That's 1900 hours. That is going to be basically 4 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And then looking at Tokyo, Tokyo stream has been moved to June 25th, 8 p.m. Japan Standard Time. So again, that is not only a time change, but it's also a date change. So for anyone looking to tune into the Chinese speaking stream, the Chinese language stream, please make a note of that. And anyone looking to tune into the Japanese speaking stream, please make a note of that. And without further ado, let's get into this stream. Remember, like I said, we're going to breeze through all the topics that we talked about last week because it is insane. We're going to go through 110 slides, I think, today. And that's still a bunch of new topics. So again, today we're doing new topics, including StatusLink, LED technology, and some products that we didn't cover last time. So we're encompassing all of the Aputure product line this time. And of course, we're reviewing all the products that we talked about last week, which were all the new products released in 2020 to 2021. So without further ado, I'm not delay anymore. Let's go, because this is going to be, you're in for a wild ride. So first off, let's talk about the Plankian curve. What is this slide, Brandon? It's crazy. I see this chromaticity chart. What is going on? So the Plankian curve, I want to understand. Everyone should understand when you're dealing with LED lights, whether you're dealing with hot lights, HMIs, and any lights in general. In order to fully understand an aperture light, you're going to need to fully understand how lights work in general, and how color works. So the Plankian curve, you can see right here, it's also called the black body curve. It's also called the Plankian locus. We're going to get into that. But first, let's describe what color temperature is. As you can see on the screen, color temperature is the temperature of an ideal black body radiator that radiates light of a color comparable to that of the light source. So what that means is when I have a tungsten filament bulb that burns at 3200 Kelvin, it's because the reason it's emitting a color that we call 3200 Kelvin is because it's actually burning at 3200 degrees Kelvin. That is not only a measurement of color, that's actually a scientific measurement of heat of a black body radiator source. So why don't my LEDs burn that hot if they're also at 3200 Kelvin? Well, that's because of something called CCT. So when we talk about CCT and color temperature in that range, we're talking about something called correlated color temperature, which is a simulated spectrum of light to match that black body radiator. So for example, when we see light from the sun burning at anywhere from 5000 Kelvin to 6000 Kelvin or 10,000 Kelvin in overcast, you can get that same color from a black body radiator emitting heat at that same temperature. However, when we're doing it with LEDs, we're doing it with phosphors, which we'll get into in a little bit. And basically, that is how we find a correlated color temperature to match the spectrum of that light to something that we would normally see with our own eyes. So to talk about the Plankian curve, or the black body curve as it says on the slide, it is the path or the locus that the color of an incandescent black body would take in a particular chromaticity space as the black body temperature changes. So Brandon, you just said a lot of words to me. What the heck does that mean? As you can see on screen, inside this XY color chart, the CIE 1931 chromaticity chart, you see this curve. And on this curve, you see things like 1500, 2000, 3200, 10,000, 6500. Basically, this curve represents white light as we perceive it. And this represents the black body curve where the black body emitter will radiate this color when it's heated up to those temperatures. So that's what we're looking at. What's what we want to be emulating when we're dealing with LED technology that's simulating these color temperatures. So one thing I want to bring up, as you can see on the warmer side, you're dipping into oranges and reds. That's the lower color temperatures. And on the higher side, you're dipping into the blues. That's the cooler color temperatures. And of course, smack dab in the middle, it's what we perceive as white light, quote unquote. That's the 6500 Kelvin. That's the 5600 Kelvin. That's what we perceive as center. That's what we perceive as white. But you'll notice that I drew a line in the middle of this curve. And basically, this is to indicate when you have a bicolor light, you're actually never going to hit on the full Plankian curve all the time when you have a light that is purely bicolor. And what do I mean by this? This means this light only has warm white LEDs and it has cool white LEDs. This is the same thing as if you have a tungsten light that is 3200 Kelvin and a tungsten light that has a gel in it. If you're cross-fading in between the two of them, you're not going to track alongside the Plankian curve because you're only traveling in a straight line. So if I intersect the Plankian curve at 3200 Kelvin and 5600 Kelvin, that means in between those two color temperatures, I'm going to skew a little bit magenta. My DUV is going to dip into the negative. You can see at the bottom right here, at the bottom of the screen, it says DUV is delta UV. That is the distance and difference you are from the Plankian locus to show how far off you are, how magenta or how green you are in comparison to this pure white copper emitter. So the value between the two intersection points on a Plankian curve is very often going to skew magenta. And the value outside of those 2 points, so above 5600 Kelvin in this particular example and below 3200 Kelvin in this particular example, is going to skew a little bit green. This is a fact of life when you're dealing with pure bicolor lights with only 2 emitters. So how do you solve this? You solve this by adding RGB, which we'll get into in a little bit, but this is something I want to explain to you. You are going to hit the Plankian curve at a maximum of 2 intersection points if you're only dealing with 2 light sources. So before we get into matching the Plankian curve with LEDs, what is the difference between cool white and warm white LEDs? Because you might think they're LEDs, they're white light, they're one and the same. That's not exactly how it works. So LEDs work by starting as either a red emitter, a green emitter, or a blue emitter. They emit a single very narrow spectrum of light. How we get white light and how we get correlated color temperature out of this light is by using something called a phosphor. A phosphor, as you can see the definition on screen, is a solid material which emits visible light when exposed to radiation, in this case from a deep blue, ultraviolet, or electron beam source. So in the case of the LEDs that we use in our houses and the LEDs that we use in filmmaking, most of these things have a emitter, a phosphor coating on top of the emitter directly. There's some technology out there by other manufacturers that use remote phosphor technology where they allow you to swap out different phosphor pieces to change the color temperature, to change the spectrum of the light without actually having to use different LEDs. You use the same emitter. But that's a very small selection of manufacturers who do that. For the most part, everyone uses a phosphor-coated LED. So what does that mean? So that means white lights start out as blue emitters. So when you add the phosphor, you make the light appear white, or you make the light appear tungsten. So daylight CCT LEDs are typically brighter than warmer white LEDs, and this is something that everyone might not know. The difference is usually by at least even up to 10% when you're getting to high enough values and you're comparing across equal wattages. Lower CCT phosphors reduce the output more than higher CCT phosphors. But on the contrary, lower CCT phosphorus LEDs are typically more color accurate than daylight phosphor LEDs. You might be wondering, when everyone says their SSI tungsten is always relatively high, and then their SSI daylight is not as high, not quite as high as their SSI tungsten. You might be wondering why. How can you get an SSI at tungsten of 85, 86, but your SSI at daylight is still good, it's still 74, but it's not in that 80s range? What is the reason? There's some technological things that you can do in order to get up to there, but for the most part, with everyone using similar LED as a base, this is what happens. Your undiminished blue light from the blue light emitter in the daylight phosphor is going to leak out more, and this is what ultimately results in a reduced R12 CRI value in your daylight LEDs and reduces the CRI. Whereas the phosphors for the lower CCT LEDs will help you emit a fuller, more balanced spectrum. So on the right, you can see here, I sourced this from another website about LEDs. I forget the name off the top of my head, I'm sorry. But you can see on the right-hand side, you have two illuminants. You have on the top upper right-hand corner, you have a tungsten illuminant, and this shows the spectrum of a tungsten unit. I believe the base color temperature for this unit was measured at about 2500 Kelvin and some change. And then for the daylight illuminant, this is a D56 style illuminant. And you can see there is some shift, there's some up and downs in that spectrum, but for the most part, it's very full and very consistent. Now, when you look on the left-hand side, you see what LEDs of that same color temperature might look like. And you can see that they're drastically different. This is something where LEDs have been improving a lot, but they're still lagging behind in terms of some technology. First of all, you'll see there's a huge blue spike, like I mentioned before, because you're starting out with a blue light emitter. And what this does, this is why R12 values always seem so low. It's not because you don't have enough blue, it's because you have too much blue and your spectrum isn't full enough. There's a huge blue spike, and then you're filling up some of the rest of the spectrum in daylight. Whereas with tungsten, because of the phosphors that we use and the technology that we have here, you're able to mimic that curve, that smooth curve of an incandescent light source much more reasonably and much more evenly. So that's something that's really important when comparing cool white versus warm white LEDs. Daylight LEDs are typically brighter, but lower CCT LEDs are typically more color accurate. So if you're going for color accuracy, you might often actually want to use your warmer tungsten side because you're going to get more accurate skin tones according to a tungsten illuminant. So what does this have to do with RGBW technology? So first of all, everyone knows what RGB means. RGB means red, green, blue. This is how I add color to all of my lights. This is how I add color to my scenes. With RGB technology, you have very narrow spectral fingerprints. So you can't fully reproduce the spectrum of white light. Here, right here on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see what it looks like if I'm mixing 3 RGB units together. Individual LEDs, they have narrow spectrums, and they do overlap, and you can fill in to make it perceive like it's white light, but you're not really getting the spectrum, just like you saw in the last slide here. You're not going to be able to recreate the complex spectrum of that tungsten illuminant or of that daylight illuminant. So how do you aid in this? You add, honestly, more colors or more chipsets. In this case, how do you find the balance of what you want to do? With RGBW, which is one of the initial steps into making a color mixing light for the film world, you typically add warm whites. So that's one white light chip. This allows for a lot more flexibility as the white light starts at the base point, then you use your RGB colors to shift up the color temperature, to shift down the color temperature, and to tune your color accordingly. However, there's a lot of limitations in that and being able to reproduce your spectrum because there's still a lot of issues. With RGBW, which is the technology that we use, we found a good balance between losing output by adding too many LEDs and too many non-white LEDs, but also achieving a really high spectral count and a really good color reproduction because we're using two LEDs that are white. So we have red, green, blue LEDs, and we have warm white and cool white LEDs. With your warm white LEDs and your cool white LEDs, the light basically acts as a bicolor light. So with the Nova P300C, which is lighting the background right now, I can dip into a white mode and I'll basically shift between the white light emitters. In between there, I'm still basically using white light. Now, again, what I talked about with the Plankian curve before, if I'm shifting between just the whites, I'm obviously going to hit some roadblocks when it doesn't hit green at the perfect point. It doesn't hit the Plankian locus at the perfect point. RGB emitters can help with that and help you tune your DUV so you're much closer to the Plankian curve than you would be otherwise. So it helps you, so when you're shifting your color temperature, RGB emitters help you accurately track the Plankian curve, and you get more color fidelity than RGB and RGBW lights than what you can do with those. RGB and RGBW lights still do this, but it's less effective because you have less white light as a base. The RGB emitters also aid in recreating higher and lower CCT values. So I can dip lower than my white, and I can dip higher than my cool white and dip lower than my warm white by using those RGB emitters to emulate that same spectrum. You can see right here, this is another LED. This is a SSI chart taken from the Oscars website. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences developed SSI, and basically this helps you to show that smooth curve right there is what it would be if it were an incandescent illuminant. And then that bumpy curve right there is a warm white LED. So this basically goes to show that RGBW technology helps you match CRIs a little bit better than it would be if you were a single white chip source or you're using RGB. But of course, LED is still not perfect. It's still not going to match a black body emitter, even though it has many other advantages over black body emitters, as for example, they don't draw as much power and they don't get as hot. So another thing to note of when you're measuring LEDs, everyone thinks that measuring LEDs is some sort of standard. To be honest, all the standards are all over the place, especially between different manufacturers. When the actual point in time, not time in the day, but the point from when the LED has been turned on, when you measure that LED matters a lot. So there's a difference between a cold state and a warm state, basically when the LED has reached thermal stability. When you're measuring the LED immediately after you turn it on, after a period of inactivity, the LED is going to appear actually a lot brighter than it would typically be 15 minutes later. Even 10 to 15 minutes is enough to achieve thermal stability with an LED at full power, being active for 10 to 15 minutes. It will start to level off. And when you measure it at that 10 to 15 minute point, then you're going to get more accurate results because it's reached thermal stability. The LED output is going to dip very slightly. And this is how you achieve the best, most accurate results when you're portraying them to your gaffer, when your customer, or when you're testing it for your own personal use. When we measure our LEDs, we measure them at a thermal stable state. And this is something that we can't say all other manufacturers do. We don't necessarily know for sure, but we do know that with other manufacturers, results may vary. So, last thing we want to talk about before we dive into the products. Of course, that was everything that has to do with a fundamental understanding of LEDs. We're going to get into one of my personal favorite topics, batteries. Now, this is a running joke around the office. I'm the battery guy. Not everyone in the office loves batteries as much as I do, but I think batteries are absolutely fascinating with what they allow you to do, not only in terms of powering LEDs, but just in the world. You take Tesla batteries for charging solar, for receiving solar energy. Batteries are super important with our progression of modern day technology. But of course, even in the film world, they're still super important. And today we're going to be focusing right on this slide with the standard V and gold mount batteries, whereas there are still other technologies that we're adapting using 48 volts, and we'll get into that in just a second. So like I said, most light fixtures use 14.4 volt batteries, whether in V or gold mount. There is another mount on the market that's called B mount. However, it is not super commonly used. It is a higher voltage battery plate developed by Bebop. with ARRI. So the LS60D and X, the LS300D Mark II, the 120D Mark II, the 300X, the 600D Pro, all of these lights can accept 14.4 volt batteries. And this is common across the industry for cameras and lights. So for the most part, when you're getting a VR gold mount battery for your light fixture, you're going to be using a 14.4 volt battery. 14.4 volt, 14.8 volt, it is pretty much exactly the same. It is the median nominal voltage of the battery. And for the most part, your voltage is not going to differ because the discharge of that battery is going to most often occur between 12 and 16 watts and at a base nominal, especially through DTAP, at 12 watts. I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you. Feel free to watch this live stream again after the fact. Remember, you have 24 hours to take your test, and we're trying to get through these over 100 slides as fast as possible. So the 600D Pro can also utilizes multi-voltage battery plates. This means it can accept 14.4 volt, 26 volt, and 28 volt batteries in V or gold mount. This is something important to note, as this is currently the only Aputure product that accepts these different voltages of V and gold mount batteries. If you skip one line down, you'll see caution. Ensure you are using the correct voltage. If you overvolt your fixture, it says can, but in all likelihood, there's a 99.9% chance that you will damage your light fixture and ruin its power supply, to be completely honest. So do not use 26 volt batteries on your 300D, on your 100D, on your Nova P300C, technically with the Nova, on your 120Ds, on your 300Xs. You do not want to overvolt. The reason why I say technically with the Nova is because if you look above Amaran COB, Nova P300C, and LS600D Pro, these can accept 48 volts via 3-pin XLR. So this is a higher voltage, and with higher voltage, you can handle higher amperages and still maintain a similar watt. So what I mean is when you're using 14.4 volts, you have to use two 14.4 volt batteries to achieve 30 amps of output over the two batteries in order to properly power a 300D at full power. With the Nova, you can also use 48 volt batteries with 7.5 amps, or particularly with the Nova, you can go down to 24 volts as it has a DC input range of 24 volts to 48 volts, meaning you can get 24 volts at 15 amps, which is 360 watts, or 48 volts at 7.5 amps. With the 600D to power that at full power, you're going to need 48 volts at 15 amps. It is a hungry, hungry boy. But that's how you're going to get the max power of your 600D when you're using block batteries. So the best indicator of compatibility, the reason I keep mentioning discharge and amperage, the best indicator of compatibility with a particular light fixture is the continuous discharge rate. And I say A and W right here. That means amps or watts. So you can measure a battery's discharge rate in 15 amps. This is a 15 amp battery. Or you can say it's a battery that can deliver 180 watts of continuous discharge. The max power draw, if you look at this formula right underneath here, I have a formula written that says max power draw divided by base battery voltage. That is the desired discharge rate. So if I have a Nova P300C that draws power at 360 watts, which is basically the same as the 300D Mark II and the 300X from the Lightstorm family, if I divide that by 12, which is the base voltage of a V-mount battery, and I divide that by two batteries, I'm going to get 14.5 or 14.6 amps of discharge per battery. And that is why we say you want 15 amp batteries. Now, of course, this is the worst case scenario, but you want overhead in your batteries as well, because heat can affect how you use your batteries. You'll see it down here, one more line. I say batteries have internal heat protections. This is something that's really important, that's something that not everyone understands. It's not like you can use batteries to their full capacity if you're draining them at high amperage rates. So let's say I have a 180 watt battery. If I'm pulling 180 watts of continuous discharge from it, that battery is not going to last 1 hour. It's actually going to last a lot shorter for two particular reasons. One, because a 1C discharge rate, 1C means I'm drawing the capacity of the battery at 1 hour. If I'm pulling it that much power, it's going to shorten the lifespan of the battery, depending on the battery chemistry. But it's also going to build up a lot more heat. And with V and gold mount batteries, there's not a lot of space inside the batteries to dissipate heat very easily because you want to keep the weight down. So certain batteries, most batteries made by reputable brands, such as the ones that are listed on the screen right here, have internal heat protections, some of which are more stringent than others. And if a battery gets too hot, then it will tell itself, okay, for the cells, in order to protect the cells that are inside of me, I'm going to shut off. I'm going to cut off power to delivering to this light source that's drawing so much power from me at the moment. I have to stop, otherwise it's going to get too hot. So because of that, this actually decreases and reduces the usable capacity of a battery just purely due to heat buildup at high discharge rates. So that's another thing that you have to keep in mind. So if I was discharging the same battery at 20 watts, I would very much likely get most of the usable capacity of that entire battery compared to me drawing at 180 watts. If you have any questions about this, I'm happy to answer them. I know this is quite complicated, so once we're going to the end of the slide, I'm going to let Ian ask me some questions from the audience. What else do we have to handle here? Something that's super important. Amp hours measures capacity like watt hours. It is not a measurement of discharge. Amp hours times voltage equals watt hours. The hours portion is hours component is very important because it shows you that you're measuring capacity, how long this battery can run at a certain amperage or wattage for how many hours. And lastly, the last thing I want to touch on is actually before that, the battery runtime formula. This is in order to get an estimate without taking into consideration that heat buildup that I just mentioned. You have your capacity in watt hours divided by your power draw in watts, and that's how many hours that your battery will last for when you're discharging it at a certain rate. And lastly, now we're at the last thing I want to talk about, DTAP outputs. DTAP outputs are often limited to 80, 90, or 120 watts, depending on your battery, regardless of the battery's full discharge rate. So you see 120 watts at 12 volts, that is 10 amps. So even if your battery is a 15 amp battery, it's a 18 amp battery, it's a 20 amp discharge battery. Pretty much the limit for DTAP in most situations is going to be 120 watts. And with some batteries, it can even be lower than that for reasons of heat or for other circuitry reasons. So you're going to want to be cognizant of that when you're using it with DTAP powered lights like the LS60D and 60X. That does not have a battery plate that uses DTAP to go into the 4-pin power connector for the 60D and X. So you're going to want to be mindful that since the 60D and X can draw up to 90 watts of power continuously, you're going to want to find batteries that can handle that and not cap out at 60 watts or 80 watts. That's something that's important to keep in mind for sure. So with that being said, I know this was a whole lot of information that you weren't expecting. Even if you're an Aputure product expert, you might not have known all these things about LED technology or batteries. So I'm going to take a little bit, grab a sip of water, and let Ian see if there are any questions that I should answer. That's a good question. So someone asked, when will the battery compatibility chart be finished? So a couple months ago, I mentioned in the Aputure user group that we're going to be working on something called a battery compatibility chart. Sorry, I'm having trouble speaking. It's not like I'm saying a lot of words or anything like that. When will the battery compatibility chart be finished? The honest answer is, I don't quite know. This was a project I started about 2 or 3 months ago, and it's still ongoing. And I anticipate it's still going to go on for a couple more months because we're not taking it lightly. We're trying to run through the gamut, get as many batteries as we can test them on as many of our lights as we can to create a really comprehensive database of everything that we can output. And when we're done with that, there won't just be a sheet. The goal is to have a whole tool on the Aputure website that you can browse. You can say, I'm looking at a 300D. What batteries can I use with my 300D? And we'll spit out a list of batteries that have been Aputure approved and tested. And if we have tested them, that means we're including a runtime. So unfortunately, I don't have an exact timeline because of how much work is going into this project, but I can tell you that we're working on it day in, day out. Connor here, who's running the live stream, has been testing batteries like crazy, and I've been testing batteries like crazy. You don't even know how many watt hours of batteries we've gone through testing the Nova, the 300D, the 300X, the 60D, 60X. There's a lot of lights and a lot of batteries, so please be patient, but I can tell you it's going to be worth it. 2 more questions from Ian. What's up? That is not an Aputure sandbag on the light stand behind me. That is, in fact, the bag for the LS60 softbox. Actually, while I'm there, I totally forgot to mention, we played the teaser for the LS60 softbox and Spotlight Mini Zoom 1 week from now, 1 week from today, next Tuesday, is the release day of the Spotlight Mini Zoom and LS60 softbox. I'm sorry I didn't get to that earlier, but basically, in 1 week from now, you'll be able to put in your orders, you'll be able to order and receive the Spotlight Mini Zoom and LS60 softbox. For everyone who's been waiting for them, I know there's been a lot of people. The time has finally come. 1 week. One more question? Can I destroy a V-mount battery by pulling max draw from it nonstop? I mean, you do technically have to stop in order to charge the battery because the battery will run out of usable power, but it's not nice for the batteries. I'll put it that way. When you're powering lights, high power draw lights with V-mount and gold mount batteries, you are going to wear through them a lot more quickly than if you were just powering them with a camera. Like I said, it's the equivalent of driving your Camry 100 miles an hour every single day nonstop versus like driving it at a nice 30 miles an hour pace where you're not going to put too much wear and tear on the engine. It's very similar in terms of just a concept of wear and tear. So you can ruin your batteries, but however, there's something to keep in mind, whereas battery manufacturers will tell you, I don't want you to draw too much power. There's a limit. There's a lot of limitations in place because they want to make it safe. Batteries are designed, a lot of these are lithium-ion batteries, and a lot of them using NMC chemistry or NCA chemistry. That's nickel, metal, cobalt. And then NCA is, I forget the full name of that chemistry. But these batteries are meant to discharge at a 1C rate. Some of these batteries we're drawing when you throw them on a 300D. If you throw a 98 watt-hour battery that's 15 amps on a 300D, that's more than 1C. So you are going to have some issues. That's why on the battery plates, we do recommend 180 watt-hours. The watt-hours is not what's the important part. It's actually important to know the discharge capacity, the discharge rate that the batteries can handle. However, the watt-hours is important to note when you're talking about the rate at which you discharge the batteries at a 1C rate, at a 2C rate. 2C rate, that means you're drawing 2 times the capacity of the battery in 1 hour, or the whole capacity of the battery in 30 minutes. That's what a 2C rate means. So the higher your C rate is, the more wear and tear it's going to put on your batteries. However, batteries have been built to withstand 1C, 2C, 3C rates of discharge. It's not totally uncommon at all. It's just something that you have to keep in mind of. Ultimately, you have to look at it like this. Do you want to baby your batteries, or do you want to use them as tools? And it really depends on the type of person and how many batteries you have and what kind of lifestyle and work style you run with. If you are going to use your batteries as tools and you know that they're going to be able to handle it, and after there's a certain number of cycles that they're rated for, they are going to die and you can have them reselled, then you can do that. However, if you want to baby your batteries, then it might not be best to use them on LED lights that have high power draws. Okay, I'm gonna take another sip of water and then we're gonna keep going talking about StatusLink. StatusLink is something that we did not talk about last time. And there's a whole host of things, parts of StatusLink that we did not talk about last year. StatusLink has really, really grown. Okay, StatusLink. Let's get to it. This is the brief introduction of StatusLink. On this first slide right here, StatusLink is the app control ecosystem for app control service for the Aputure ecosystem. You can find StatusLink on iOS, iPad, and Android. Status Mesh Bluetooth Network. This is the technology that the StatusLink system works on. Basically, inside each of these lights, there is a Status Mesh chip that allows each of the lights to talk to each other as well as to the control device, whether that's your phone, your iPad, or your Android phone or tablet. And with StatusLink in its current iteration, you can control up to 100 fixtures at a time and up to a 400 meter maximum range. So what does this mean? There's a 30 to 80 meter hopping distance. That means between each light, depending on the fixture and depending on the strength of the antenna, you're going to be able to hop up to a max of 30 meters or 80 meters, depending on in the most ideal conditions. But because each of these are hopping and talking to each other, you can stack these hops up to 400 meters away from your phone. As long as there's enough intermediary sources, you can control a light that's up to 400 meters away in ideal conditions. In StatusLink mode, there's a basic standard of the types of modes you have. You have white light, you have gels, you have effects control, and presets. This covers the vast majority of the lighting control systems that you'll find in StatusLink. You also have CC group collaboration, which we'll dive into a little bit today. And of course, you can control legacy fixtures Legacy fixtures, meaning fixtures that only have 2.4 gigahertz control and do not have Bluetooth control, using the StatusLink bridge, which we talked about last week. So let's start off fixture management. How does this work? So you can with this fixture management workflow, you can manage all of your light fixtures. And in the fixtures management menu, which you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, you can have master control of intensity and on-off. You can find your lights by tapping that little gray button next to each of the lights' names, and it will cause the light to blink and send out an SOS signal. You can also view the battery life or remaining power of your fixture. So you can see if the fixture is plugged into AC power or if it's on battery, how much estimated battery life it has left based on its intensity and remaining capacity. With certain new fixtures and new firmware updates, you can even adjust fan speed by tapping those 3 dots next to the power area and opening up the menu for that light. In that menu, you can adjust your fan speed as well as do an over-the-air OTA update for each of those fixtures. And then, of course, with the fixtures management menu, with the green plus sign up top, you can add fixtures and add fixtures to different groups. Now, moving on to one of my favorite things, console, and especially console for iPad. With console, you can quickly adjust the intensity of lights with sliders. That means it's going to say whatever light I'm controlling, it's going to stay at the same settings that it was previously. I can drag it up and down, turn it on and off, and this will help me adjust the intensity very quickly without having to hop into each individual light. If you go over to an upper right-hand corner, you see white. White is where you can quickly set the intensity at 5600 Kelvin and still adjust the intensity. So let's say I'm dealing with a Nova with a 300D with a 300X, and in a split second, I got to change everything to white. If I go to white mode and just drag all the sliders up, all the lights will change from whatever color settings they were before to 5600 Kelvin daylight. Now, console for iPad is what's really powerful, and it's what is now available in what's called the Pro Standard version of iPad, which we'll get to in a little bit. This allows you to adjust all your lights with sliders. You can move around everything in the console. This is how you can reorder your fixture management menu. You can see everything in the iPad version is linked to whatever color of the CCT or hue that the light is emitting. And you can see on the screen right here as well, in the console menu, you actually can pull up a secondary window that is basically the same interface that you would use on an iPhone or an Android phone, and allows you to operate 90% of your activities from console mode. So you can live within this mode if you're on an iPad, and that's honestly one of the more powerful things about StatusLink for iPad, which is its own little system. Going on, you can save lots of settings in StatusLink. So talking about saving settings, you can save virtually an unlimited number of presets and quick shots. With the standard version of StatusLink, you have up to 50 megabytes. If you get the Pro Premium or Pro Team version of StatusLink, you can save up to 200 megabytes worth of space. But to be completely honest, either way, you're going to be okay, because with presets and quick shots in particular, these take up so little space, you're going to be able to save a virtually unlimited number of them. So with presets, what is the difference between presets, quick shots, and palette shots? With presets, you can save and recall settings for individual lights. So let's say I set a Nova to a hue of 210 degrees, which is my favorite hue on the Nova, at a saturation of 100%. At an intensity of 18%, I can save that as a preset and recall that later. With quick shots, I can save and recall settings for all the lights in a scene. So let's say I have that Nova set at that color that I just mentioned. I have my 300D, that is my key light, set to 100%. I have my backlight, which could be a 300X, set to 2700 Kelvin at 20%. I can save that all as a quick shot. If I change the settings again, I can reopen that quick shot and everything will come back to the quick shot that I just saved. So quick shots is how you save light settings for an entire scene at once. With palette shots, which we'll get into again in a little bit, I'm foreshadowing here. Palette is a new feature in StatusLink, and with palette shots, you can save and recall settings created in Palette. Store is another way you can save settings inside StatusLink, and this is basically save and recall effects and magic program sequences. So picker effects, music effects, and magic program sequences all go into a store functionality that is separate from the presets and quick shots. So let's get down to bare bones basics, white light effects with StatusLink. Now, most of you, if you're watching this live stream, I'm willing to bet have tried StatusLink at one point or another, especially if you have an MC or B7C. That's how you unlock the full capability of those lights. StatusLink is a smart app with two-way communication, so that means when I open it on a Nova, I'm going to get the full breadth of control that I can have with an RGBW fixture like that, a professional RGBW fixture. But when I open it with a 300D Mark II, I'm only going to get daylight intensity controls because that's all the light can do. I'm not going to have green magenta shifts for the 300D2 because that doesn't make sense, and I don't want it cluttering up my screen. So StatusLink is really good about that. And this screen that you see right here is a screenshot from controlling a Nova P300C. With Source Match, which is also a white light feature, you can use your phone's camera to actually mimic and capture the CCT of another light source out in the real world. So in this case, I'm going to basically take a photo with Source Match of a light that is at a more incandescent color temperature than the white lights that are of the 300D and the 600D that are lighting me right now, and I can transmit that to the Nova, and it can match that perfectly. So this Source Match feature is available for all bicolor lights. However, green magenta shift obviously is only available for lights that have RGB shift in them, particularly for the Nova, is where the drivers are really optimized for it. For the other lights, the smaller lights, the drivers aren't really optimized as much for green magenta shift, although it can be done. So for example, if I'm in demo mode and I want to get a source match, and I take a source match of the lights at 7-Eleven, or basically any convenience store for anyone who doesn't know what 7-Eleven is, and the lights skew a little bit green at 4300 Kelvin, I can save that as a preset and take that into my Nova later. So I don't have to bring my Nova with me in order to do that. And that way, when I'm shooting on a blue screen or green screen later, if I want to mimic that exact lighting, I can take that preset that I saved and transmit it to my Nova, all done through Source Match and presets. So basically, all done through StatusLink and my phone. You also have effects mode, which includes up to 15 system effects. So there's a difference between system effects and Status Pro effects and custom effects, which we'll get into again in a little bit. There's a lot to cover with StatusLink. You have up to 15 system effects with the Nova P300C, and we'll kind of get into those again when we review the rest of the slides. But the Nova P300C has the most effects, and the daylight units have the least number of effects with 8 effects available. Gels and color control. This is another thing that's really important. I'm showing you the screenshots from the phone versions, but of course, these are all available with a larger screen and a larger interface on the iPad app. With color gels, you can actually choose from visible color swatches that you can see. So whereas on the Nova P300C, if you're flicking through gels, you only have the names of the gels, and you kind of have to flip through each one. On the StatusLink app, you can see I have all these color swatches. I want a bastard amber. I want a steel blue. I can know by eye that that is the color that I actually want to mimic versus having to guess and check. I can know that right away. That's one of the really powerful features of StatusLink. And you'll also be able to see the DMX coordinates in StatusLink for each of these gels. That basically allows you to work a lot faster. And of course, also have your HSI color picker, which is done on a hue wheel, like most people who use Photoshop or anything like that are used to, this kind of interface. But of course, you also have your HSI sliders. If you select, just tap the button in the bottom left-hand corner. So you can choose your hue via a slider, and you can choose your saturation via a slider. Next to that, you see you have X, Y, and gamut. With the Nova P300C, that is currently the only light that allows you to change your gamut. But basically for X, Y, we're using a CIE 1931 color chart. This across the entire filmmaking industry is pretty standard. You use either CIE 1931 or CIE 1976. Can't go older than that, my bad. But for the most part, right now, everyone is standardized to CIE 1931, and this is how you can achieve a little bit more cross-compatibility with other brands, or more accurately pick the exact coordinate of color that you want. And of course, we have our favorite effect, color picker, which is right next to this color section. Is very similar to source match, whereas source match, you're taking the average white balance based off your camera's white balance protocols. With color picker, you're having a dot in the middle of your camera, and you get to point it at a color, and it will take that hue and saturation value of that color from your camera and transmit it to your light. So you can see right here, this color picker has snapped a color that is a 40-degree hue with a saturation of 89%. So basically, I can take a picture of the Aputure logo. I can take a picture of a clipboard. I can take a picture of a tennis ball with color picker and transmit that color to the Aputure Nova P300C. Obviously, the more useful functionality version of that is taking a brand's colors and transmitting it to your lights so you match them as closely as possible. Now, moving on to palette. Okay, we're going through StatusLink. I told you that there's a lot. StatusLink is a fully fledged ecosystem at this point. Since in the past year, it's grown tremendously. So with palette, you can unleash color theory in your lighting. Most people who have gone through film school or taken any art classes, anything like this, if you've done any research about color and filmmaking, you'll often hear about color theory. And with color theory, there's a different associations of different colors that you'd like to use together. So you can use a variety of up to 6 color schemes in palette at the moment. You have monochromatic, complementary, triadic, split complementary, contrasting color, and analogous. Are we experiencing technical difficulties with the Facebook stream? I'm going to hold off for a second and grab a sip of water. Dun, 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 dun. So for everyone who's watching the YouTube stream, for whatever reason, due to Restream.io, it seems like the Facebook live stream went down. However, the YouTube live stream, if you're watching this, obviously is still up. So with that in mind, we're going to keep going and pushing through. Are we paused right now? Yeah, we're still going, so we can just keep going. You can just share the link for Facebook when that's live. Cool. Let's keep moving on. So with StatusLink, you can with palette, you can create schemes of up to 12 colors. So what does this mean? Whatever of these 6 color schemes that I chose, I can add up to 6 different color coordinates to that color scheme to create up a variety of up to 12 colors. Did I say 6 again? I meant 12. So with palette, you can use HSI mode, so to use pure colors, hue, saturation, intensity. You can use CCT mode so that you're limited to just white light and colors via based off of the black body curve like we talked about earlier. Or you can use multi, which is when you're combining HSI and white light sources together. This is important if you're combining, say, your Nova P300C, your MC, with also your 300D and your 300X. Those are obviously white light sources that are going to be limited to that, and they can't produce color. You can save and store all these palettes for future use in palette shots like we talked about earlier. Cool. So for whatever reason, it seems that Restream.io is not letting us cast to Facebook at the moment. So please, if you know anyone who's viewing on the Facebook side, please let them know to transition over to YouTube. Sorry for this. Sorry for the technical difficulties. It seems that our content distribution network is not working as well as it should be. However, we can still move forward with YouTube for the time being. So with palette shots, you're able to transmit color palettes to the individual lights in your scene. It has a very intuitive interface, as you can see it on the screen right here. You have your color wheel, you have your selection of the different color schemes you're working on, and then you also have the ability to manipulate those colors after the fact inside palette mode, where you can then drag the tiles onto each of the lights that you have. So you add lights into your palette group from your scene, and you can say, I want to add 2 of these MCs, 1 of these Novas, and you can either use random, default, or custom modes to assign all of the colors to each of those lights. So I can click default and it will go in order. Each light that's in order will receive 1 of these colors. However, if I want to be more specific and have more control over my lighting, I can of course drag each of these tiles onto each of these lights to assign a specific color to it. Basically, palette is a way for you to really easily use color theory and really quickly use color theory in your lighting on set. It's really important as a filmmaker to understand color theory and the power that can have inside of your scene. So moving on, we have picker effects. This is one of the effects that we introduced last year, and it allows you to record, save, and upload or transmit lighting effects to your different Aputure lights. So you can capture, I said capture twice. You can capture lighting effects in real life with your phone camera, and you can record up to 2 minutes of a picker effect. So a picker effects can have a max length of 2 minutes. Let me give you a hint, memorize that for the test. Hint, hint. With picker effects, you have your spot or average metering modes. What this means is when you're using average metering, you're taking light values from the whole scene that the camera can see and then averaging them together. However, if you want a lighting effect with more velocity and more activity, then you're going to want to use spot metering for that because it gets the metering from dead center in the screen and allows you to have more control over how large of a velocity your intensity changes are going to be. You also have CCT or HSI mode. So you can record a picker effects that's wholly based for bicolor light, and it's only going to change and vary in CCT mode. However, you can also record it in HSI mode and know that you're going to have color value changes, but you can also upload that HSI mode as a CCT mode type effect later on. So you have a lot of flexibility in being able to edit these effects, because yes, you can even record a fire effect that is orange and then change the hue of that fire effect, which I like to do a lot, to make that a nice green, little wicked kind of green fire that you can get with picker effects. Record a fireplace, change the hue to green, and now I have a green fire effect on my MC or my Nova P300C. You can upload up to 4 or 10 effects depending on the fixture. The MCs and the B7Cs can take 10 effects. The StatusLink bridge can take up to 4 effects via picker effects. You could upload it via the screen that you see on the right on this slide. You can also recall picker effects without the app. This is currently available with the Aputure MC, and basically, if you go do custom effects inside of the MC, you can recall different picker effects. It is the preset version, whereas with picker effects inside the app, you can edit your effects, you can adjust your hue, saturation, and intensity. You can also adjust the intensity, speed, and randomness of the effect inside this playback menu, where you can also choose whether you want to play back once or play back on repeat. Picker effects is also one of the only StatusLink features right now that can do real-time transmission to your light based on what you're changing. And you also can use picker effects only right at the moment on one light at a time due to the bandwidth of the StatusLink Bluetooth network. So next, we're going to talk about manual effects. I didn't write it here, but something to note is that manual effects is also something that you can operate in real time on your individual light or also on groups of lights. So manual effects is an effect, Status Pro effect, that you can use on groups of lights. With manual effects, you can create a unique lighting effects from scratch using a variety of sliders. You can see the entirety of what you can do here on screen. You have 2.312783744644700 times 10 to the 21st power possibilities. I wrote the name out before. It's like 2 deca or tredecillion. It's a crazy high number. You have infinite numbers of possibilities with manual effects. All you have to do is adjust sliders to manipulate the effects. So you can choose a source base of CCT or HSI, and then you can select your colors via point, range, or chase. This basically tells you I want to pick it at red, and I want it to stay red, or I can choose a range between red and blue, and I want it to oscillate between red and blue, and that's basically what chase is. So when you bring up range, you select your type of chase, whether that's forward, sequential, whether that's in reverse, whether that's alternating, or whether that's random. Each of these will give you different types of effects, of course. In your effects mode, which is where manual effects gets quite complicated, but quite powerful, is you have flash, continuous, and segmented. With flash, you have active and inactive time, cycle time, and flash frequency. These are the things you can control. Flash effects are really good for bursts of things like lightning and fireworks, things that are going to repeat and flash at high frequencies. And with continuous, you can choose your fade in and fade out times, fade out curves, cycle times, and flicker frequencies. So basically, this is meant for something that's going to be a lot more smooth. You can plan a pulsing effect in continuous. And segmented, you have your active, inactive time, fade out time, fade curve, cycle time. Basically, every single thing that was in flash and continuous you have, but you also have your overlap probability and overlap rate. Because with segmented, you're combining the two of them, and basically you can choose whether you want your effects to overlap. You can see on the iPad on the right here, I'm going to go back to that. You can see this animation of the iPad on the right. This is a segmented effect, meaning that there are gaps in between, and I can set them to overlap. I can set different cycles to overlap with a certain probability if I wanted that. You can see one of the most powerful things of manual effects with the iPad version of the app is that there is an innovative preview window on screen. So with the iPad version, you can see exactly what your effect is going to do when you're programming it, which is honestly insanely cool. And I know the Status team put a lot of work into designing something like this. So going on, we have music effects. Another Status Pro effect that was released just recently with the iOS 1.6 version of the update. This is not available for Android or iPad yet at the moment. It is currently only available for iOS, but the iPad version of this will be coming quite soon. They're working on it as we speak. With music effects, you can generate custom lighting effects based on audio, if you couldn't guess that from before. With music effects, you can have automatic BPM analysis inside the app, and you also have in-app audio file editing. So you can trim any audio file to your needs. You can import a variety of files into music effects. And with store mode, you can upload a effect up to 2 minutes to select Aputure lights. You can upload that effect to a fixture. With project mode, you can have a file that's up to 30 minutes in length, and that's just live transmitting it to a fixture. And with live mode, of course, very self-explanatory, you can capture audio and transmit it to the light in real time. So music effects, manual effects, and picker effects, you can all do in real time for real-time effects coordination. This is something that's really important to know and a very powerful feature. Music effects, like picker effects, due to the bandwidth of Bluetooth technology, it's just not quite there yet. You can only do this with up to 1 light at a time at the moment. However, we're working on other avenues to see where we can expand upon this. Music effects supports multiple audio file types, which is really important: AACA, MP3, WAV. You also have this visualization window like you saw inside the Nova version, not the Nova version, the iPad version of manual effects. And basically this visualization window is quite clear. You can see at the upper right-hand corner of the screen, there is a visualizer that shows what your audio sounds like. And how you might be asking, how does music effects work? You can actually program specific frequencies to specific colors. So if you see the color band on the screenshot on the phone right here, that's actually each frequency is programmed to emanate a specific color, and that is the default band. However, you can choose specifically, you program, I want 2000 hertz to 4000 hertz to be red. I want 6000 hertz to 10,000 hertz to be blue. I can choose a gradient, or I can choose very specific bands of colors that I want with specific frequencies. So you have a lot of power here to emulate a lot of different things. Of course, the creme de la creme, the king of the show with StatusLink, Magic Program. This is where you unlock complex sequences of effects within StatusLink and with Magic Program compatible lights. So this right here is a little snippet of our commercial showing Magic Program and showing you what you can do. All these different types of effects, linking MCs together, linking B7Cs together, linking Novas together. Let's go, Magic Program. So Magic Program is an intuitive node-based timeline that allows you to control and create complex sequences of effects and triggers within StatusLink. You'll notice that between each of these nodes, you have a 200 millisecond gap. So that means you cannot initiate the same trigger at the two different triggers at the same time. These two triggers have to be at least 200 seconds apart. And you have a max timeline length with Magic Program of 10 minutes, which is quite a long period of time to be able to control. You can loop through this or play back through it once. And just because your timeline length is 10 minutes, that does not mean the length of your entire effect can be 10 minutes, because if you trigger another effect at the 10-minute mark and you play it through once, that effect will still keep going. Currently, Magic Program is compatible with the MC, the B7C, the Nova P300C, and the Amaran 100D and 200D, and 100X and 200X. With Magic Program, similar to manual effects, you have your flash and continuous controls, continuous lighting controls. You have your effects controls. You also have on, off, and blank. So getting into a little bit more detail, with Magic Program, you can control up to 25 lights. You'll see when you're doing your array configuration, you can choose array of 2 by 2, which is 4 lights, 3 by 3, which is 9 lights, 4 by 4, which is 16 lights, or 5 by 5, which is 25 lights. So you can control up to 25 lights at a time with Magic Program. This is, again, is due to the bandwidth limit of Bluetooth, but is a very powerful thing you can do. 25 lights is still a lot of lights. It's a lot of MCs. We've done it a lot, and it's pretty crazy what you're able to accomplish with it. So you're able to create complex triggers with these. And with arrays, you can actually link together multiple lights to have multiple lights trigger the same effect at the same time. So like I mentioned, you cannot trigger 2 different effects at the same time. There is a 200 millisecond gap. However, you can have multiple lights trigger the same effect at the same time if you have linked them together using the array tool. You'll have array A, array B, array C, etc., so on and so forth. With the different types of effects you have secondary modes inside of there. You have your CCT, HSI, effects, and chase modes for whatever type of effect you're trying to curate with Magic Program. You're able to do a lot here. You just have to really play around with the app in order to figure out the full breadth of the capabilities that you can achieve with Magic Program. Heading down the list, of course, we have filming tools in StatusLink. Filming tools is a really simple selection of options. Basically, there's a light meter and there's an optics calculator. The light meter allows you to help you really quickly estimate lighting ratios on set or whether you're scouting. This is just really helpful as a guessing tool and to give you some sort of frame of reference. And the optics calculator allows you to estimate power draw and output during planning and scouting. So you really know how much, you have an idea, a general idea of the photometrics and the type of output you're going to get out of certain types of fixtures. This is really all for estimation purposes and just to help you give you a frame of reference. Going down the line, before we hit out the end of it, which I believe is Diagram Master, we're going to hit CC Collaboration. So CC Collaboration is where a lot of the power of the StatusLink workflow and how it was designed comes into play. So StatusLink, as many of you know, you can connect a bunch of lights to your app yourself if you're an indie owner operator, and you can control everything from your phone or from your iPad. However, if you're working on a larger set, which is often done, I've seen this done a lot of times outside of the United States, in Asia, where you're working on sets that don't necessarily have DMX operators, you can have a StatusLink, a member create a StatusLink creative collaboration group, a CC collaboration group, and basically this be your person who does all your rigging and linking. So this person creates a scene and links a bunch of lights to the scene. I say I want to link, okay, my 300D to this light, I want to link a Nova, I want to link a few MCs for the next scene because I know that that's what is needed for the next scene. That's what the DP and CLT, Chief Lighting Technician or Gaffer, told me I need in the next scene. He can do this all in the meanwhile the DP and the CLT are prepping another scene or shooting another scene or just doing pre-production in general. Then when they're ready to shoot, this rigger can share that scene with the DP and the CLT because with the standard StatusLink creative, with a standard CC collaboration group, you can have up to 3 members. Now you can all operate them together, and each person can individually control one light at a time and operate in the same scene at a time. CC collaboration is a really simple joining process. You can either add emails, you can send out a code, or you can join very easily when you're around each other. Like I said, with standard CC collaboration, you have up to 1 group at a time and up to 3 members per group. You can also temporarily share a scene. So if you're not trying to do this for a long period of time, if you're not working with these people for a long time, but you just know that you need someone to help you out for a few hours, temporarily sharing a group is a great way to help you do that and not be in the same CC group permanently. It's not permanent, but for a long period of time. You can also share diagram master creations with CC collaboration, which we'll get into, I think, on the next slide. And of course, let's do this important point right now at the bottom. Recently, an update was rolled out for iPad version 1.5, and that basically changed the structure of how iPad works. So now iPad, which was previously a paid app in the iOS iPad App Store, is now a free app, is a freemium app. So you get a base selection of features for free in iPad, but if you want to access things like Smart Console or Magic Program inside the iPad version, you do have to pay a subscription fee. If you are a previous owner of the iPad version of the app, you are squared away for life, basically until 2098. And if any of you live that long, I would say that's freaking amazing. With Pro Standard, you get 1 CC group and a max of 3 members per group. With Pro Premium, which is the next level up, you can have up to 5 CC groups and a maximum of 10 members per group. And the same thing is true for Pro Team, 5 CC groups and a maximum of 10 members per group. So you might be asking, what is the difference between Pro Team and Pro Premium? With Pro Team, think of this as your business account, your business model version of StatusLink Pro Premium. When Pro Team, you can choose subscription plans of 3 members, 5 members, 10 members, 15 members, 20 members, 25 members, or 30 members. And basically, anyone who's in your Team CC group gets the features of Pro Premium. So they don't have to individually buy Pro Standard. While they're in your group, you have granted them access to your subscription and allow them to use those features. So if you're a gaffer on set and you have a lot of SLTs running around set working with you, each of them can have access to Magic Program. Each of them can have access to the console still without each of them also having to buy their own version of Pro Standard. So that's a quick overview of CC collaboration and how that works with the new iPad structure. Here we are, Diagram Master. I was right. Okay, Diagram Master. This is a really powerful tool that StatusLink has been growing for a little while. Before, it was just available for iPhone, but now that it's available on iPad and iPad 1.5, I think it's really reached one of its higher potentials. You can use Diagram Master to plot out diagrams with equipment from all the major brands, basically, not just Aputure or Amaran, from Arri, Astera, Quasar, you name it. this Diagram Master app allows you to drag and drop and resize preset icons that are inside the app, ready to go. You do not have to create anything yourself. We have done all the heavy lifting for you. With Diagram Master, you can also link diagrams to scenes and schedules inside this part of the app, and this allows you to manage your shooting schedules in pre-production and on set day. With Diagram Master, when you're planning out your lighting plots, you can also see the power and statistics views. This allows you to see generally how many lights am I using in a certain scene, how many lights am I using throughout all my scenes, of which types of lights. Let's say my statistics show I'm using 3 novas in this scene and 3 300Ds in this scene. It'll also show me the power draw requirements that I'm going to have to be able to sustain. So if I have 3 novas and 3 300Ds, that's a total of 3 lights that each take about 360 watts max. 360, I'm going to do this math live. 360 times 3, 9, 10, 1080, 1080 times 2, that's about 2,160 watts. So your Diagram Master is going to tell you that you need to be able to power 2,160 watts of lighting. Diagram Master also allows you to add notes, text, and labels now, which is another powerful thing that was added to the iPhone version of 1.6. And basically now you can create more detailed lighting diagrams like you would in Illustrator or any other type of app you were using beforehand, but now on the convenience of having it in your iPad and your lighting app where you have the lighting fixtures, because we designed this for filmmakers. You also have a wrap-up list function in Diagram Master, which basically tells you, now that you've created and plotted out your lighting plan, you have a wrap-up list that tells you, this is all the equipment that I think I need. I put 3 300Ds in the scene, and I also put them each on C-stands, so my wrap-up list will say, I need 3 300Ds and 3 C-stands to go in order to shoot the scene the way I've designed it. So this allows you to generate an equipment breakdown for whatever you need to deliver to your rental house, to deliver to your producer, or just so you have peace of mind in knowing I brought everything to set that I need. Diagram Master CC groups, like I had mentioned before, with CC collaboration, you can share Diagram Masters to other people in your CC groups, which makes it easy for everyone to be on the same page about what it is that you designed for your lighting, so everyone knows exactly what tools they need to get. And if you need to send out to other people with iPad only, you can actually export this Diagram Master as a PDF, JPEG, or PNG and send that as an email to whoever you need it to. It really allows you to take full advantage of everything that is filmmaking oriented about StatusLink and put it on your iPad for easy workflow access. Cool. That is StatusLink in a nutshell. We've gotten to StatusLink Bridge, which is back to the products we just talked about last week. I'm going to take a quick break. Do we have any questions? Everyone's getting it? I must be amazing. What's going on? It is an annual fee. It is not a monthly fee. It is an annual fee. Cool. This is StatusLink Bridge. That's a typo on my part. That's on me, but please bear with me. Like we said before, StatusLink Bridge allows you to connect your StatusLink app to legacy 2.4 gigahertz lights, which includes lights like the HR672 series, LS1 series, the Tri-8 series, LS300D Mark I, and 120D Mark I and Mark II. I'm going to breeze through these slides. Anything, like I said before, anything with a white stripe means it's a new slide, and anything without a white stripe means it's a slide that we covered last time. So with the slides without the white stripe, we're going to breeze through real quick. StatusLink Bridge, you can control legacy 2.4 gigahertz lights up to 100 meters away, and allows you to also boost your mesh StatusLink signal, so it acts as a fantastic master node and acts as a fantastic intermediary. I saw a picture on the user group just today from yesterday from Smallfoot Lighting. I forget where they are. It's in Colorado. They have a StatusLink Bridge next to the iPad on their car at all times. They also have a StatusLink Bridge in the house wherever they're operating, so it allows them to have StatusLink mesh Bluetooth signals throughout the entire working area. Okay, moving on, you can use Status Mesh. Again, like I mentioned, you have 9 built-in lighting effects, a few of which are not available on other lights that you would think. So basically, with the StatusLink Bridge, you're able to access lightning, strobe, fire, candle, paparazzi, faulty bulb, cop car, pulsing, and strobe. These are fixed features and effects you're bringing to legacy 2.4 gigahertz lights that previously did not have effects. The only light that had effects that is a 2.4 gigahertz light from Aputure is the 120D Mark II, and that has 5 of these effects, which is pulsing, faulty bulb. It doesn't have pulsing actually. Faulty bulb, paparazzi, lightning, strobe, and TV, which the StatusLink Bridge does not have. StatusLink Bridge also has Status Pro effects. Like I mentioned before, it has picker effects compatibility. You can store up to 4 picker effects. Basically, you can capture these effects with your phone and transmit it to these new legacy lights. You can control up to 12 groups of lights, just like your RC1 remote. And that's basically 3 channels and 4 groups. You set your lights to each one of these channels and 4 groups, depending on which selection of lights you want to control. And of course, there's an adaptive LED brightness indicator on the StatusLink Bridge, just on the top between the 2 antennas. So when you're in bright outdoors, the LEDs will glow brighter so you can see them. And when you're indoors and it's dark and dim, it will be dimmer, so you do not have to be interrupting your scene. Moving on, power and build of the StatusLink Bridge. It has a lithium polymer battery inside of it that lasts for over 18 hours on set day, so you're going to be able to get through your entire set day. However, if you forgot to charge it last night, fret not, you can charge the StatusLink Bridge very quickly via PD. You can charge it to full power in under 50 minutes. The StatusLink Bridge is also IP65 dust and waterproof. You can see this is me. I think this is me pouring the water from a water bottle onto the StatusLink Bridge to show how durable it really is. It supports USB-C PD quick charging, has a 1/4-20 screw mount, and uses user-replaceable RPSMA antennas. So this is the same antennas that we'd use on a 2.4 gigahertz router. So if you break the antennas or you lose the antennas, you can really quickly replace them with something from a router and get new antennas at Best Buy or anything like that. They're really easy to replace and mod if you need to. Basically, that's something you can do with the StatusLink Bridge that we found was something that was lacking in other transceivers from other manufacturers. Whereas if you couldn't undo the antenna or you damaged the antenna, you might have more trouble getting that fixed. So this is a quick recap of the StatusLink Bridge. I will leave this on screen for 15 seconds. You can, of course, scroll back in the live stream to view this at a later time. After the live stream has ended, you can go back because it's all recorded on YouTube. I'll stay here for a few more seconds. Okay, moving on. Lightstorm point source series. We're going to go through this real quickly. What are some of the key common factors of the Lightstorm point source series? So you have sharp, cuttable, hard light. This includes the LS60D, the 300X, the 300D, the 120D, the 600D. These are all sharp, cuttable, hard lights because they're point source lights. They're also all easily modifiable due to them being single source lights. These point source lights are all have bones mount for interchangeable accessories. You'll see at the bottom the LS60D and 60X, despite being focusable LEDs, do include a mini mount to bones mount adapter. So if you do need, you can throw on a bones mount softbox. These all take V or gold mount battery power for operation in one way or form. Whether with the 600D Pro, you can take multiple forms of the V and gold mount, or with the 60D, 60X, you can take them via D-tap, and there's a V mount slot on the side. They all have durable metal constructions. They have sturdy locking yokes, whether that be a rosette style yoke on the 60D, 60X, or a disc brake locking yoke on the 300D and 600D. And they have silent smart fans on all of them in a variety of fan modes. And they all have wireless control, whether that be Bluetooth mesh or 2.4 gigahertz remote. As a note here, you can see at the bottom, to prevent your lights from melting your gels, always use heat shield when applicable. And do not get these gels too close to the light source of each of your bare COB LEDs. This is a bad idea. It may very well melt onto the lens cover of the COB LED or the CSP LED, depending which light you're using. If it gets too hot, the gel can melt and it can actually shatter the lens cover. And you don't want that because then you have to get that whole thing replaced. You might ask why that cover exists. Cover exists basically to protect the lens in case something like that happens. You would rather the lens cover shatter than your entire LED chip go wrong. So this is the 120D Mark II. So because it's not a review, I'm going to slow down a little bit. I bursted through that last slide very quickly, I know, but it's time to take a chill pace. We're back to the 120D Mark II. So we have the 120D Mark II off to my side right here. I have it powered with a blue shaped battery, so it's real easy. Ooh, shooting me in the face. So the 120D Mark II is the second iteration of one of our most popular lights. It is the second generation of the 120D, which is the first COB light that we created in the D series of Lightstorm after Tungsten, which is the 120T. We also, this light with the reflector that you use can achieve up to 7,000 lux with the standard reflector, so that's a stippled reflector, or 27,520 lux with the hyper reflector in the middle of the beam, or 67,000 lux with the Fresnel 2X at spot. That's a 12-degree spot. The 120D Mark II, as it is the second generation of this light, did receive a power boost from the first generation and has a power output of a 150-watt LED and a maximum power draw of 180 watts. This 180 watts is perfectly suited for that 15 amp battery that I mentioned earlier that I recommended, because at 12 volts, 15 amps, that's 180 watts. The 120D Mark II, just like the other daylight lights, are rated at 5600 Kelvin, have a very high CRI, of course, of 96 or 97 plus for the TLCI, and of course, utilize a Bowens mount. And all new 120Ds do come with a hyperreflector, the same hyperreflector used in the 300D Mark II. So with the 120D Mark II, you can control it via onboard dials. You can control it via the 2.4 gigahertz remote, like I mentioned earlier. This includes the StatusLink bridge because it uses the same 2.4 gigahertz signal. And you also have 5-pin DMX capabilities. We'll bring this up to the close-up camera right here. You see a 5-pin DMX on the bottom of the control box. The 120D Mark II also has 5 built-in lighting effects, like I mentioned earlier. That includes paparazzi. This is, yes, paparazzi, fireworks, faulty bulb, lightning, and TV. The 120 Mark II is the first Aputure light with lighting effects built into it. The next one being the MW, which has the same selection of effects. The 120D Mark II, like the 300D Mark II, like I mentioned before, can use 14.4 volt gold or blue mount batteries. But to full power the 120D, you only need one of these batteries because it is only a 180 watt power draw. It also has fan modes of force and auto. It has a disc brake locking yoke, which is the first light that we brought it to, as it was kind of like the predecessor to the 300D Mark II as well. It has a lot of the features that the 300 Mark II would go on to improve upon. And it has a baby pin receiver. That's a 16 millimeter or 5/8 inch receiver. So here is a recap of the 120D Mark II on screen for a few seconds for you to be able to scroll back to later. And with this, we're going to take a short break. So we're going to leave it on screen for a few more seconds, and then we'll go take a break, cut to a break with the live stream. Cool. Looks like we're live again. Last time I said we're back. It's Dave Donaldson with Grip Tips, and I got called out for that by Dave Donaldson, the man himself. So I'm watching you right there, watching you right through the camera lens. Okay, now we're going to be talking about the 300D Mark II, which is basically the bigger brother to the 120D Mark II in most aspects. It's, again, a daylight point source LED with an output at 3 meters. I'm showing it at 3 meters this time just because it's a much more powerful light. You're going to be using it from further away a lot of the time. At 3 meters, you're going to get a lux with a reflector of 3500 lux or 9400 lux with a Fresnel 2X at full spot. The 300D Mark II has a power output of up to 300 watts and a maximum power draw of 350 watts, which, like the Nova P300C and the 120D, basically is two batteries of 15 amp batteries to power this guy. Has a 5600 Kelvin CCT, and has a CRI and TLCI of 96 plus, and of course comes with a Bones mount. The 300D Mark II is the first light to feature StatusLink bridge. So with the onboard, you can have your onboard controls. You also have your 2.4 gigahertz, but also StatusLink bridge with the built-in antenna, just like on the 120D Mark II. And you also have 5-pin DMX in and out on this guy. This is also the first Aputure light that is firmware upgradable and allows us to keep updating this light as we go along, and this type of light as we go along. 300D Mark II has 3 more effects than the 120D Mark II, so the whole lighting lineup comes up to pulsing, explosion, strobe, lightning, TV, faulty bulb, fireworks, and paparazzi. And it also has 4 dimming curves, which is another request that we got asked for. The 120D Mark II uses an exponential dimming curve, which is very common among LEDs. However, with the 300D Mark II, you can choose between linear, exponential, logarithmic, and S-curve. Linear is what most people end up on for the most part, because when you cut the light by half, you are cutting half of the power. The build of the power in the 300D Mark II, you can power the 300D Mark II with the same batteries you use for the 120D Mark II, except you need 2 of them for full power, or you can use on the red side battery plate, you can use the other side, my bad. You can use the red side battery plate, you can power the light for up to half power for with a single battery. Put this guy back on, cool. With the 300D Mark II, you of course have your fan modes. You have force and auto. With force mode, you're going to be at a constant 28 decibels, 28 dBA at 1 meter. Honestly, even if I'm standing right here, I doubt you can hear the 300D Mark II over the noise of the AC. So that's how quiet these smart silent fans are. And with the 300D Mark II, you can daisy chain up to 2 head cables together, get you a 6 meter maximum head cable length, because each of these head cables is 3 meters long. And you do want to use special higher rated power 5-pin XLR head cables. You can make your own, but we also sell these through the repair centers, because these lights these cables don't only need to deliver data, they also need to deliver power. This of course has a disc brake locking yoke and a 360-degree rotation. With the 300D Mark II, it has a quick release lightning clamp for the power supply and a control box that allows it to really quickly mount to a stand using the lightning clamp, as you can see right here. And of course, then I can just snap it onto the light stand. Once again, slot it into the lightning clamp right here, get out the cable out of the way. Let's go. Bam, it's locked in place. Makes it super easy to grab and move around set. I don't have to worry at all about things swinging around. And of course, it has a baby pin receiver as well. This is the recap of the 300D Mark II. I warn you right now, after this, when we start getting back into review topics, we're going to breeze through these topics because this presentation is a little bit long, and I know that we have a lot more to get to. So, you're ready with the 300D Mark II? Okay, let's go. 300X. So we talked about the 300X last time. This is a bicolor point source LED. The outputs I'm not going to read out to you. It has the same output and power draw of the 300D Mark II, but it has a expanded color temperature range of 2700 Kelvin to 6500 Kelvin. It also has an SSI tungsten of 85, like I mentioned before. Your SSI and your tungsten is going to be a lot better than your SSI and your daylight compared to a D56 Illuminate. It has color blending optics, making it the first bicolor flat chip LED point source that basically is compatible with optical modifiers like the spotlight mount and the Fresnel 2X. Other bicolor point source lights which use striped COBs are not compatible with these types of modifiers. It also includes a Bones mount, just like the 300D Mark II, because it has basically the same body. It has the same control functions, such as 2.4 gigahertz remote, StatusLink, 5-pin DMX 512, but it also has uniquely 2 output modes. So it has a max output mode and a constant output mode. With a max output mode, whatever you set your brightest output to, it will provide the brightest output for each CCT. So if you have these lights at 100% intensity, at 2700 Kelvin, it's going to be dimmer. At 6500 Kelvin, it's going to be slightly brighter than 2500 Kelvin, like we talked about before, but it's still going to be dimmer. And then when we bring it together at 4300 Kelvin, that's when you unleash the light's full output. So you're achieving max output throughout the entire curve. However, if you're using constant output, no matter what color temperature you're at, you're going to be receiving and achieving the same level of output. This makes it really convenient for shooting on sets and where you're trying to do a live cue change, or if you want to just basically have peace of mind that you don't have to change your f-stop every single time you change your color temperature. You also have a 9th built-in lighting effect, which is fire, which is for all the bicolor lights that Aputure and Mandarin make. If you are a bicolor light, you can have fire. If you're a daylight light, you don't have the fire capability because with our fire type effect, we built in CCT shift. You also have the same 4 dimming curves and quick access to CCT presets like 2700 Kelvin, 3200 Kelvin, 6500 Kelvin, just by tapping the CCT preset button. You also have the build is the same, including the power, 6-meter maximum head cable. The fan noise is slightly louder than the 300D Mark II. However, it is still fairly quiet, and you're still going to be able to keep on going after that. This is the recap for the 300X. This is available in the last live stream as well as in this one. I will leave it on screen for just a few more seconds before we carry on, because there's a lot to get through. Okay, cool. We are moving. We are motoring. This is the 600D Pro. This is the king of the Lightstorm lineup right now. This is the beast. It can have an output of 8500 lux with a reflector at 3 meters or 29,300 lux at 3 meters, basically putting it on par with some higher powered HMIs. It has a power output of 600 watts, but has a power draw of 720 watts. 720 watts, if you're good at math, is basically divided by 4. That's 180 watts on each battery. So basically, yes, you do want to have each battery on the 600D Pro to be able to deliver 360 watts per battery. Again, I'm talking really fast just so we can get through everything. You can see the rest of the specs on screen here. The 600D Pro was the first weather-resistant design light that we had in the Aputure family. The 600D Pro also has the most control methods of any light in the Aputure family. This includes onboard control methods, StatusLink, 2.4 GHz remote control, 5-pin XLR, which we are very familiar with. However, now we also are adding Lumen Radio, wireless DMX, and ArtNet via Ethernet. There's an Ethernet port on the control axis of the 600D Pro, and that allows you to integrate that into your system. It has the 8 built-in lighting effects, just like the 300D Mark II, same 4 dimming curves, but it has a full color LCD display, which allows us to display a lot more information and a lot more nuanced types of details for the 600D Pro. Regarding power and build of the 600D Pro, like we mentioned before, it can accept a multi-voltage range of batteries for the 600D, as well as a 48-volt 3-pin XLR input for batteries. You can full power it using the specs that you can see on screen right here. I'm going to leave this here for a little bit. Again, it has a weatherproof design, quick release lightning clamp, disc brake locking yoke, has a max head cable of 7.5 meters, which is sold separately. We're going to be releasing this very soon. I know it's about to start shipping over because of some shipping issues that we've had just with the whole situation that's been going on right now. I can assure you that it's on its way. Basically 7.5 meters gets you about 25 feet worth of range for the head cable control box to the lamp head. You can't go much further, and that's because of the issues with AC to DC conversion and line loss, which I got into a little bit during the last live stream. You also have a dual junior baby pin on the 600D Pro, which is the first Lightstorm fixture to have this feature, but it is not the first Aputure product to have the dual junior baby pin. Here is the recap of the 600D Pro. The 600D Pro can also charge batteries, can also charge 14.4 volt and 26 volt batteries when it's plugged into AC power, and the output is less than 70% in linear, 55% and 70% in linear and exponential, dimming curve mode, 55% in S curve mode, and 30% in logarithmic mode. Motoring on. Okay, cool. We have the 60D and 60X. These are daylight and bicolor focusing LED sources. Basically, allows you to get up to a 7,600 lux in spot at 3 meters for the 60D, or 1,100 in flood at 3 meters. Or with the 60X, you're still punching really high at 4,200 lux at 3 meters in spot and 700 lux at flood at 5,600 degrees Kelvin. So one thing to keep in mind, if you want a reference for these types of guys, we don't often like to compare them to other types of light sources because the comparisons don't work that well. However, if you did want something to compare it to, the 60D is a good comparison against a 650 watt tungsten Fresnel, whereas the 60X is brighter than a 300 watt tungsten Fresnel. This is using something like an Area 650 Plus as a reference. So the power output on this, guys, is 60 watts, just like their name, 60D and 60X, and then you have a power draw of up to 90 watts. The CCT, of course, depends on which model you are getting. Both of them have high color fidelities, with the 60X performing very well on SSI tungsten with a score of 86. The 60D and 60X have wireless control via StatusLink, and they also have their onboard controls. Everything else is adjusted on the lamp head using the 15 to 45 degree adjustable beam angle, which is adjustable through the spot flood control knob. And like the other lights before, the daylight light has 8 lighting effects, and the bicolor light has a 9th fire lighting effect. Again, power for the 60D and 60X is actually very nuanced. You can use DTAP batteries with the included DTAP power cable. You can use Sony MPF batteries with the dual MPF battery plate that is included. You can use a single MPF battery plate for half power and 2 MPF batteries for full power. And of course, like we mentioned here in the last live stream, we have been hearing that people want an extension lead for the 60D and 60X lamp head. So that's something we're looking into. We're looking into making a 7.5 meter head cable extension. Moving on to build, the 60D and 60X are also weather resistant lights that are in the Lightstorm lineup. And they use an LS60 mini mount, which includes 8-leaf barn doors and Bones mount adapter. This is what's included inside the kit, but of course, it is also compatible with the LS60 softbox and Spotlight mini zoom, which we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. There's also a V-mount quick release system on the side of the 60D and 60X, which allows you to mount the power supply like is mounted onto the Spotlight mount, or mount a V-mount battery directly onto the 60D or 60X. Basically, it's something that allows you to make it really compact and really easy to move around. It also has a baby pin receiver on the light. This is the recap for the 60D, 60X. I'll let you digest all this information before we continue motoring along. Okay, onwards we go. Nova P300C. The Nova P300C is an RGBW LED soft panel. It has an output of 3 meters of 1100 lux at 5600 Kelvin. So it is a quite bright soft panel. We've done the calculations, and when you're at about 5 meters distance, it pretty much is very comparable to a Sky Panel S60C. I would still say the Sky Panel is slightly ahead, but for the most part, it's very comparable in that same range. Again, largely in part due to the wattage of the light, but also due to that WW RGB chipset that we have inside the light. It has a native CCT range of 2000 Kelvin to 10,000 Kelvin, which is basically heading up the largest range that we have in our entire product lineup. In terms of native CCT, it has a power draw of 300 watts, power output of 300 watts, and power draw of up to 360 watts. Wow, lots of words. Controls, of course, we have your onboard controls, your StatusLink controls, and your 5-pin DMX. This is also a Status Pro Effects compatible light with Status Pro Effects live features for manual effects, music effects, and picker effects. You can upload these effects to the Nova P300C at the moment, and of course, it's also Magic Program compatible. This has the most lighting modes of anything inside the Aputure lineup. It has CCT mode, GELS mode, FX mode, HSI mode, XY mode, and source. And of course, like I mentioned, it has 15 built-in lighting effects, the most of any Aputure light. And you can save up to 4 user programmable presets on the control box. You can see the buttons 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bottom. Just save any preset from any setting, from any mode inside the Nova P300C. You can save it to one of those and recall them in an instant. The Nova P300C has an accessory slot that allows you to be compatible with the Nova P300C softbox, as well as the Nova P300C barn doors and third-party accessories. It has the 24 to 48 volt DC input for batteries. And of course, you can use it with at full power with 24 volt at 15 amp DC batteries, 48 volt at 7.5 amp DC batteries, or using the 2-bay battery power station. With a Nova P300C, I've been able to achieve a max head cable length of 15 meters. That's 5 of these daisy chained head cables that we use with the Nova P300C because they're not delivering so much power. Except, I would say for most cases, that's not the most optimal thing to do. You'd probably want to run a longer DMX lead or use StatusLink just to remote into the app much more easily. The Nova P300C is the first Aputure light to use a dual junior baby pin, and of course uses the quick release lightning clamp on the back of it to attach the control box. You can also buy it in a variation with a durable hard shell wheeled carrying case. Here is the recap for the Nova P300C. Okay, and we will continue motoring along. Here we go, Amaran. Okay, we finally moved on to the next line, Amaran. So Amaran with the 100D and 200D, like it said at the bottom, there is no white stripe, which means we've covered this last week, which means we're gonna breeze through this real quick. Has a bright output with or without the reflector. It still has large chipsets that will allow it to produce a lot of output. Has a 5600 Kelvin because these are daylight lights, and they have color fidelity scores of up to 74 degree score of 74 at D56 SSI. So when you're comparing the light to a D56 black body illuminant. The 100X and 200X score even better in color, with the 200X scoring at an 86 in tungsten and having still strong outputs at 5600 Kelvin. This is important to note because of the way we designed it. They still have very bright outputs at 5600 Kelvin. And this also matches the color temperature range of the 300X with a color temperature range of 2700 Kelvin to 6500 Kelvin. This also has quick access CCT presets, just like the 300X. So to control all the Amaran series, the COB series, the 100D, 200D, 100X, 200X, you can use your onboard controls, or you can use StatusLink. This Amaran lights are also Status Pro Effects compatible, so you can use Magic Program, Picker Effects, etc. The daylight light has 8 built-in lighting effects, and then bicolor light has 9, the 9th being fire. And they use linear dimming curves because, for the most part, we learned that that's what people preferred. The Amarans can be powered via 48 volt at 48 volt 3-pin XLR, but the amperage that each light needs depends on its wattage. So the 100 watt lights would require 14.4 volt batteries at up to 6 amps or 65 watts discharge, whereas the 200 watt batteries would require batteries that can handle 10.5 to 11 amps, 125 watt discharge. They are also all Bones mount point source lights, so they can use the whole host of Bones mount modifiers, with the exception of the 100X and 200X being able to use optical modifiers because they use striped COB technology. So therefore, they are not compatible with the Fresnel 2X and the Spotlight mount optical modifiers such as these. But they are, of course, compatible with the Lantern, the Light Domes, soft light modifiers, because those are all diffused and mixed together by the diffusion cloth. They each come with medium and smart fan modes built in, and you can change these fan modes inside StatusLink. And they all come with baby pin receivers, as well as a locking umbrella holder, which is something we brought back to the Amaran series, so you can have a cheap soft light source. This umbrella holder will tilt with the lamp head. Again, here is a recap of the Amaran COB series. Let me give you a quick breather, and myself a quick breather, before we keep motoring through. After this next product, we can take a break and ask some questions. But let's go to the second product first. It'll be the F7. Don't make any jokes. Those of you who thought of some jokes, you think you're so clever, don't make any jokes. The F7. The F7 is a great light. The F7 is an expanded bicolor on-camera LED panel. I have one over right here. It is a very, very bright light. It is super, super bright. It is not a mini light, I might add, but it is a very, very bright light. It's still fairly small, with a 7-inch cross diagonal right here. At 1 meter, it has an output of 1500 lux at 5600 Kelvin. And part of how we were able to do that was in part due to the large CCT range. So when you're at 3200 Kelvin, only the 3200 degree lights are on. Let me show you right here, but also turn down the intensity so I don't blind the camera, because that's not super necessary. So I'm going down to 3200 Kelvin, half the LEDs are on. Increase the intensity a little bit. When I go to 9500 Kelvin, the other half of the LEDs are on. So when I'm at 5600 Kelvin, I'm able to take a cross section just like the 300X at 4300 degrees Kelvin and utilize both sets of LEDs in order to achieve a lot brighter output. So the F7 has a max power draw of 15 watts and a max output of about 12 watts. It is also aided by its 45-degree beam angle. So this 45-degree beam angle, compared to a lot of the mini LEDs, which have a wider 120-degree beam angle, is part of what allows you to get a lot more light out of it than some of those, even the brightest of the mini LEDs. It can accept Sony MPF style batteries. It also has a DTAP input, so you can use DTAP batteries, V-mount batteries, and it also accepts USB Type-C. When you're using Type-C, you will be cutting the output by half. So that's something to keep in mind if you're wanting to be running it off of AC power or USB battery banks. The estimated battery life with one of these is about a little over 3 hours at max output. Again, this really depends based off of what battery you're using, and you can trust me because I've run at least 10 different MPF batteries with this F7 and even more D-type batteries because of the battery compatibility chart that we're working on for the next few months. It also has, of course, high color fidelity scores of CRI and PLCI of 95+, just like with all Aputure products. You control this via an onboard control. There's no remote control for this guy. It lives on top of your camera for the most part or in your scene, and it has a simple switchable control knob that allows you to change whether you're controlling CCT or whether you're controlling intensity. The accessories that it comes with a frost diffusion sheet that goes into and slots into these little slots right here. It also has a white diffusion sheet, which is a heavier, thicker diffusion that basically allows you to soften this light a lot more while keeping the same surface area. So it doesn't soften your light by increasing the size of it, but it also blends all the LEDs together and creates a softer source of the same size. It also comes with a heavy-duty cold shoe ball head, one of my favorites that we make on any product. And of course, it comes with a carrying case. The F7 is, of course, passively cooled. There is no fan inside of this and has 1/4-20 mounting threads on the top, bottom, and side. This is the top. This is the side. This is the bottom. This is the side. I know my directions. You can trust me. Cool. And with that, before we head into mini LEDs, let's take a quick break. Ian, do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, this is quite, so the question is, can you use an adapter to control 5-pin DMX lights alongside lights that use 3-pin DMX? This is something that's actually really common in the stage lighting industry and in the filmmaking industry. But in the stage lighting industry, there are a lot of modern lights that use 5-pin DMX, but there's a lot of older lights that use 3-pin DMX, and there's a lot of people who are using older boards that have 3-pin DMX, and a lot of people who are using newer boards that have 5-pin DMX. For the most part, they are intercompatible as long as you have the right adapters, and I've seen it work with 5-pin DMX over 3-pin DMX adapters with 300D Mark II. That answers that question. Anything else? Okay. My favorite light is one that I can't talk about. I'll put it that way. Got you there. Okay, now we're talking about the M9. Let's bring out this bad boy. This is the first mini LED that we ever released, and has inspiration from a funny place that Ted likes to talk about a lot. This is a daylight mini panel LED. And the inspiration for this light was someone came up to us at a trade show and asked, I would really like there to be a light that was basically an index card that lights up. Can you make me an index card that lights up? So obviously it's not as thin as an index card, but it's still pretty pocketable. I can put this in my front pocket right now because I actually put the MX in my back pocket. This is an incredibly small light. It's called the M9 because it uses 9 daylight LEDs, and it comes with this little diffusion panel right here. It is the first mini LED that we ever created. It has an output at 1 meter of 80 lux, and it has an output of 5 watts. It has an 1800 milliamp battery in it that allows it to last for 1.75 hours at max output and charges via USB micro B. And of course, it has a 5600 Kelvin color temperature. With the M9, you have 9 steps of dimming control via the plus and minus buttons on the side. And it also comes with a CTO, CCB gel, and of course this diffusion panel. And on screen, you can see that cold shoe to 1/4-20 adapter for the M9 that clips into these slots right here. This is super easy to tuck away, hide in your pocket, to keep a few in your backpack, to tuck under shelves in kitchens. This is a super easy light to use as a practical accent light in almost any scene. When these came out, this was the thing to have, and it's still the thing to have for a really cheap accent light. Moving on, we have the M9's big brother, the MX. The MX is a bicolor light, and it has 128 S&D LEDs on top of it, and that's why it has this fat heatsink to cool down the MX. With the MX at 1 meter, you can get about 200 lux and has a power output of 8 watts. Has the same size battery as the M9 just to keep weight down as much as possible because the aluminum is adding a chunk of weight to the MX. With maximum power, you're going to get about half an hour. With minimum power, you're going to get about 4 hours, and it uses a USB Type-C charging input. Note that the MX And the MW, which I'm going to talk about next, cannot receive USB-C PD charging. You do have to use USB-C Type-C that can, a charger that will output something closer to 5-volt 2-amp. So you do want to use 5-volt 2-amp chargers with this guy. You want to use PD. The MX has a color temperature range of 2800 Kelvin to 6500 Kelvin, so it is still expanded bicolor, and it has, of course, our high CRI and TLCI ratings. With the MX, you can control the dimming in 5 steps of levels for either bicolor or CCT. And something that the MX has that the M9 did not have is something that we introduced with this light, something called boost mode. With boost mode on the MX, you can increase the output of the MX by up to 30% for 1 minute. This is supercharging the LEDs and overcharging the batteries and basically making it so that we can squeeze as much light out of it as possible for that minute time before the batteries and the LEDs do need to cool down and go back to the normal color, the normal output. The MX includes 2 diffusion panels, a frosted diffusion sheet, which can Velcro to the side to create a larger bubble, and a cold shoe ball head inside the kit. It is passively cooled using its aluminum heatsink design and has a 1/4-20 mount on the bottom. The MW. That didn't happen. The MW is a daylight mini panel LED, and there's so many things that are unique about the MW. First of all, let's start off with the fact that it is a hyper-efficient COB LED. So yes, this is a mini LED that uses COB technology and is a daylight light. So it gets a massive amount of output. At 1 meter, it gets 300 lux from a mini LED that outputs only 10 watts of LED power. So it uses the same COB type technology that is found in the 120D, the 300D, the 600D, chip on board, lots of LEDs on a single substrate. With its 3800 milliamp hour battery, you can achieve 1.33 hours at max output or over 24 hours at minimum output because you can take it down to right at 1%. The MW, the W stands for waterproof, by the way, is IP68 and can waterproof up to 10 meters in depth. And we've tested this ourselves. Ted has taken this to Catalina Island in California, if you know where that is, and dived with this guy even deeper than 10 meters, but we rate it to 10 meters. The charging input on the MW is, like the MX, USB Type-C, but like I mentioned, do not use USB-C PD chargers with it. You do want to use standard charge that will do 5-volt 2-amp, so 10 watts of input. It has a 5600 Kelvin color temperature, has a high CRI TLCI, and it has onboard control methods, so there's no wireless control. But it also has boost. So MW, just like the MX, has a boost function that allows it to increase its output by 50% for up to a minute. It also includes a filter holder, silicone diffuser, CTB and CTO filters, that's full, half, and quarter CTB, CTO, and a frost diffusion, and in addition to that, silicone diffusion. So you can really diffuse up this light as needed and stick it on. The gel holder allows it to stay on and clip onto the MW, so you can still use these gels underwater, nothing's floating away on you. And the MW, like I mentioned before, like the 120D Mark II, is the first mini LED to have any built-in lighting effects, and it has the same built-in lighting effects as the 120D Mark II. These are lighting effects presets because there's no screen on the MW, but you can control lightning, TV, faulty bulb, fireworks, and paparazzi with the MW. It also has an aluminum heatsink passive cooling and has a 1/4-20-inch mounting thread. So those are the 3 mini LEDs that we did not cover last time. The MC we did cover last time. It is our pride and joy right now, little baby, the MC, an RGBW mini LED panel with an output of 100 lux at 1 meter. It has a 5-watt output, and it's super, super flexible because of the RGB and because of that bicolor functionality. You get estimated battery life of 2 hours at maximum output. It can accept USB-C PD charging at 9-volt 2 amps. So in 90 minutes, it can charge to full capacity with the CCT range of 3200 Kelvin to 6500 Kelvin, an SSI tungsten score of 85. You can use this with onboard controls using the dial, but you can also use StatusLink, which really allows you to unleash the full capability of the light, especially with Status Pro effects. Yes, this was the first light to be compatible with Magic Program, Status Pro effects like picker effects and manual effects, and of course has 9 built-in lighting effects like you can see on screen. Has built-in neodymium magnets, which are super great and can be included in kits as well, just like the MC4 Light Travel Kit and the MC12 Light Production Kit. The MC4 Light Travel Kit includes the things that you see on screen here, including 4 lights, a wireless charging case that's meant to be packed away and tucked away in suitcases and backpacks. It's super slim and super lightweight. An accessory pouch that matches alongside it and matches the same dimensions as the travel kit. Thing to note, like I mentioned last time, absolutely do not close the lid when charging the MC4 Light Travel Kit. or charging the MC12 light production kit or the Accent B7C 8 light kit, because you will generate a lot of heat through this process, and it could potentially damage the batteries, the MCs, and also you when you open the case and touch the scalding hot light. Moving on, the MC12 light production kit, we're rounding out towards the end of talking about some of our lights. We have the MC12 light production kit, which is designed for set lighting technicians, rental houses, and large-scale lighting packages. The MC12 light production kit includes 12 of these lights, 12 of the charging bays, 3 USB ports. It also has a stowaway drawer that allows you to store your accessories that come with the MC12 light production kit. Basically, it was extra room that we had in the case, and we decided, hey, let's make a drawer out of it. Again, do not close the lid when charging. The Accent B7C is the next family of lights that we're going to be talking about, and it's kind of in that mini LED family, but it's really its own product line. It is an RGBW LED smart bulb. It uses the same chipset as the Nova P300C, so that's why it has the same 2000 Kelvin to 10,000 Kelvin color temperature range. It has the same CRI, TLCI, and tungsten, SSI tungsten values, and it fits into any E26 or E27 lamp socket. So any standard lamp socket you can screw it into, and it uses a toroidal diffusion cover that allows it to dissipate the heat from the internal battery, which is super unique, and it has a 160-degree beam angle. So the Accent B7C is the only filmmaking smart bulb that has wireless control, that has onboard buttons, and that has a built-in battery. All of these things that were made with filmmakers in mind. It's also flicker-free up to at least 1,000 frames per second. So you're not going to flicker like you have with LifeX bulbs or Philips Hue bulbs. These smart home bulbs that you have on set that are not really designed to be working on a film set, they also have much higher color renditions. So you can control the B7C with StatusLink or the onboard control buttons, which no other bulb has when it comes to just more than a power button. The B7C has plus and minus buttons on the bulb itself. And you can control, with this, you can control, turn this light on. You can control by double pressing the center power button. You can cycle through CCT presets, and you can use the plus and minus buttons to adjust the intensity of the light. So even if you don't want to have time, if you don't have time to pull out the StatusLink app, you just want to throw a practical into set real quick, you can get this out, turn it on, set it to the desired CCT, and throw it into your scene. You're good to go. The B7C is also compatible with Status Pro effects, including Magic Program, and has these same 9 built-in lighting effects as the MC. Like I mentioned, it is battery powered. As you can see, it's not connected to anything at this moment. This is just me holding it in the air. It has a 1,300 milliamp hour battery, and it can run up to 70 minutes at maximum power. It can charge in an E27 socket if it is off and inactive in up to about 2 hours. This toroidal diffusion, again, like I mentioned, allows it to diffuse heat and also has gives it its 160-degree beam angle. This is the Accent B7C. It's a recap slide for you to look at real quick to digest all this information. Okay, everyone, I know we're getting there. Here is the Accent B7C 8 light kit. Again, the same bulbs that we just talked about, except now it comes in a kit of 8, and it charges the lights very simply because it has 8 E27 sockets that you can push the bulbs into. That's correct. You do not have to screw each of the bulbs into the B7C 8 light kit. It is a push-pull design that allows you to just push the bulbs in and pull the bulbs out with a little bit of pressure. It makes it so you don't have to constantly be twisting and give yourself a repetitive stress injury. These also have spring-loaded socket covers. So when you remove the bulb from the case, you're not accidentally going to touch any of the circuitry and shock yourself. It also has built-in 3-amp fuses that are replaceable, and it comes with 3 to replace with. Basically, we designed this kit because you're dealing with live AC power to be super safe and for set lighting technicians, rental houses, and larger lighting packages. Now, let's talk about the modifiers. We talked about all the lights. Before we get into that, let's take a little break and see if we have any questions. Is there a limit to what? Once the test opens, the test will be open for 24 hours. So you have a full day to take everything. Don't want to put too much time pressure on you. You have time to take it, and you have time to review everything as you go. If that's the only question, let's take my favorite battery. That's a hard one. I don't have a favorite battery. I love all batteries. I don't love all batteries equally either.
Dave wants to give you a pallet of AA's.
I don't like AA batteries unless they're rechargeable AA's. Disposable AA's are a waste. They're bad for the environment, Dave. Why would you do that? Anyways, before we get to modifiers, let's take a quick 2-minute break. Hey everybody, we are back, and Thanks for letting me take some time to charge my batteries. I see you new now, project. Anyways, let's keep going with modifiers. This is the last section of the ALC presentation before you get to have an information dump on all of these questions. It's about one question a slide, not necessarily one question per product, but that's after sitting through 110 slides, you're going to be able to answer these 100 questions. But I would suggest take a break. Take a break. You do not have to get to it now. You have 24 hours to get to the rest of this test right after this presentation is done. So feel free to digest the information, go get some food if you're still hungry like we are, and we'll keep going. So let's talk about the Light Dome 2. This is the pretty much flagship Light Dome, pretty much flagship softbox that we make at Aputure. This is a 32-sided round design. It is a quick release build, which means it can open up real fast and close down equally as fast. You don't have to take out each individual rod. It can just snap open. And it comes with a removable gel holder accessory. So this gel holder allows you to put gels inside of it and snap it into the speed ring. However, I do want to make a note. Do not use that gel holder with the 600D Pro. Absolutely do not do that. Your gels will definitely melt because of how close the gel is to the bare COP. But let's take a quick second to talk about how gels work with lights and why sometimes your gels might melt in the gel holder. So first of all, always when you're using the gel holder with these COB lights, you always want to use heat shield with these gels, especially the darker gels. How a gel works is that when you're shooting light into the gel is a filter that basically is going to filter out the remaining spectrum that you don't want to see. So if you use a red gel, a red filter, you're only going to get red light because that's what it's allowing to pass through. Everything else that it's not allowing to pass through, that means it's absorbing it. And if it's absorbing all that light, it means it's also absorbing all that heat. So the darker and more saturated your gel, the more hot it's going to get and the more likely it is going to melt or burn. If it is a well-manufactured gel from a leading reputable manufacturer, the gel is likely going to melt and not much is going to happen, except it could melt onto the lens cover of the COB like I mentioned before, and it could melt and crack the glass. However, if you are getting gels from a less reputable manufacturer, I've seen gels burst into flames. That should not happen. That means if you have a gel that bursts into flames, you need to get different gels from Roscoe or Lee. That's who you need to be looking at for your gels. Don't cheap out on your gels because safety is a high priority. Going back to the gel holder accessory, do not use it with the 600D, or even if you're using it with the 300D Mark II or 120D, you do want to be using heat shield, which you can get at Lee or Roscoe, just some sort of clear, heat absorbing, very high heat gel that you can use in conjunction with your saturated color gel. Light Dome Mark II comes with two front diffusion options, 1.5 stop and 2.5 stop diffusions. So some people ask, why is it 1.5 stop and 2.5 stop? The 1.5 stop is similar to a polysilk or artificial silk, and the 2.5 stop is something similar to a cine cloth type of level of diffusion. We just leave out the stops that they are just to give you a little bit better idea of what it is. And of course, the Light Dome Mark II also comes with an inner baffle diffusion to help diffuse the point source light to the rest of the softbox. Again, this is something if you're using with the 600D Pro, we do not recommend using. So we're going to get to that in the recap. Basically, the build of the 300D, the Light Dome Mark II, it has an 89 centimeter, or about 35-inch circular diameter. It also has a 65 centimeter depth. So it is a pretty deep softbox to get you a nice kind of depth and wrap for your subjects. So if you do want something that's a little bit shallower, you might want to look at the Light Dome SE. It's compatible with Aputure and Amaran Bowens mount lights because they use the Light Dome SE and a Bowens mount. And it comes with its, of course, the speed ring and its travel case. This is something we have to mention because not all manufacturers do this. However, that is something that we always make sure to do with Aputure lighting accessories. Collapsed, it is heater the dimensions when it's collapsed, and when its total weight of the entire package is 2.55 kilograms, 5.6 pounds. So it is a little bit on the heavier side. Something to keep a note of for the test. Just giving you another hint, very casually. Here's a little recap of the Light Dome Mark II. It is an all-purpose soft light modifier for interviews, content creators, music videos, narratives, commercials. We've seen this thing used absolutely everywhere. And again, we advise removing the inner baffle with the 600D Pro and do not use the gel holder. Moving on, we have the Light Dome Mini Mark II. This is another Light Dome product that uses the same quick release build design, so it can snap open really quickly and break down very quickly. It uses a 16-sided, so still very round, but just not as large as the Light Dome Mark II beauty dish style design. So what this means, it has a tighter curve, but it also has an inner reflective baffle instead of a diffusive baffle. So therefore, it gives you kind of like a ring that you would find inside of a beauty dish, which is very common in the photography industry. Again, it has a removable gel holder accessory, but again, like with the Light Mark II, I do not recommend using the gel holder or the reflective baffle inside the Light Mini Mark II. However, the whole housing of the Light Mini and the Light Mark II, they're fine to use. The diffusion is fine. Just remove the inner baffles and the gel holders. The front diffusion for the Light Mini Mark II is also a little bit harder to mimic a little bit of that beauty dish style, and it uses a half grid style diffusion. And like I mentioned before, it has the reflective inner baffle, which is a gold-silver reversible baffle. The build of the Light Mini Mark II is a 55 centimeter diameter, or 21.6 inches, and it has 29 centimeter depth. Again, it is compatible with Aputure and Mandarin bones mount accessories. Speed ring is included, and here's the total weight. It is 1.64 kilograms, which is less than the Light Mark II. Moving on, here is the recap for the Light Mini Mark II. Just gonna let this sit here for a few seconds to let everyone digest. Before, of course, going to the next one, which is something that we recapped before, which is Light SE. So let's breeze through this. This is designed for content creators. It is super, super lightweight. Keep this in mind. It also has that same 16-sided round design. Basically, you insert the rods into the speed ring, unlike the Light Mark II, which is pretty much already built. The Light SE does pack flat for travel by removing all the rods from the speed ring. It also has the same 2 front diffusion that included with the Light Mark II. So you have the 1.5 stop and 2.5 stop front diffusion. For those of you who remember the Light Classic, this is basically the next step and the next upgrade of the Light Classic, because it has another diffusion. It also has the fabric light control grid, but it packs flat in the same way. It's also a little bit less, it's a little bit shallower and a little bit narrower in terms of diameter. It has an 82 centimeter diameter versus the 89 centimeter diameter, and it has a 45 centimeter depth, which allows it to fit into nicer, tighter spaces than one might say with the Light Mark II. Of course, it is compatible with Aputure and Mandarin bonus mount lights, speed ring and travel case included. Here is a total weight 1.1 kilograms, so it's even lighter than the Light Mini Mark II. Here is the Light SE for recap purposes. Okay, moving on. Here is the lantern, something we did not talk about last time, but we talked about its bigger brother, the Lantern 90. The lantern is a 65 centimeter or 26-inch omnidirectional softbox with a 2-second quick setup design, which means all you got to do is push down on the clamp for the lantern, hook it into the hooks, and basically you're set. Lantern can set up in seconds. That's why it's called the 2-second quick setup design. The lantern also has a 1-stop diffusion. It is an omnidirectional softbox, so therefore it also has a fabric light control skirt included with the lantern, which not all manufacturers do. This allows us to control the light of the lantern and control spill from different directions, which is something that's really important with an omnidirectional softbox, because you don't want light to spill everywhere. Lighting is about control. Cinematography is about controlling the light that you have. So sometimes you want light to be everywhere, and sometimes you want light to be in a lot of directions, but maybe not this one. So that's something you can do with the Aputure lantern. As a note, do not gel the inside of the lantern when used with the 600D Pro. And be careful when using gels close to any COB LED, but especially the 600D Pro. When you're putting it that close to be inside the lantern, it is guaranteed going to melt from the heat of the 600D Pro. Here's a Lantern 90, which is basically a bigger version of the other lantern that we just talked about. Is a 90 centimeter omnidirectional softbox, and it has a 70 centimeter depth. Everything else is pretty much the same. It's just a bit bigger. Cool. Moving on. Talking about the LS60 softbox, the thing that we'll be releasing in 1 week. So this is a soft light accessory for the Aputure LS60D and 60X. It is designed for fast-paced lighting and compact lighting packages. The actual build of the LS60 softbox is slightly larger than a 1x1 LED panel, has a fabric light control grid just like the Light SE, and it has the 2 front diffusions that light just like the Light SE, 1.5 stop diffusion and 2.5 stop diffusion, and of course also packs flat for travel. So earlier, someone was asking me if there's an Aputure sandbag on the light stand. No, that's not an Aputure sandbag. This is actually the case for the Light LS60 softbox, and you can see how small this is. You can see it in front of my face, next to my face. The LS60 softbox is absolutely tiny when it's packed away. You can definitely fit this in a backpack or a suitcase. In fact, I put the LS60 softbox with this bag inside my backpack to take it to a trip out to the beach to do some lighting and cinematography. Cool. This is the little recap. Oh, did I skip something? No, I didn't. This is the recap of the LS60 softbox, including the build of the LS60 and the dimensions. Here's the build. Slides got flipped around. My bad. The LS60 softbox is a 35 centimeter by 35 centimeter square softbox, so that's roughly 14 inches in the square. It has a depth of 30 centimeters. It basically turns your compact, focusable LS60D and 60X into a soft light source, and basically it makes it a lot more versatile and great. I would figure this is great for interview lights if you're already using a 1x1 LED panel, or as a hair light, because it's super easy to take that focusable source and turn it into a hair light if you have it armed out on a stand. Next, we have the Nova P300C softbox. This is another softbox that's made specifically for one of our lights. It is made for the Nova P300C and slots into its accessory slot. So it has a 70 centimeter by 50 centimeter softbox, has a 28 centimeter depth, and it comes with a quarter grid diffusion, so it opens up the size of the Nova P300C, but doesn't cut too much light out of it. It also has a fabric light control grid included and the removable corners. So that's something that not everyone knows. With the softbox for the Nova P300C, you can actually remove the Velcro corners where you would typically attach the diffusion to and slot the rods through. So therefore, you can connect the 4 rods to the mounting frame and then slide the softbox cover over the rods rather than the other way around, just to make it a little bit easier to set up and put the tensions in the right place. That may help you when you're setting up this P300C softbox the next time. It also includes a carrying bag with an elastic loop. The elastic loop on the back of the softbox is meant to slide onto the handle, the extending handle of the Nova P300C hardshell rolling cage. The Nova P300C barn doors have a very similar bag with the exact same elastic loop, and it is a 4-leaf barn door kit. It's compatible with the Nova P300C accessory slot, has fabric light leak covers on the corners, on the sides of all the barn doors. And this helps to minimize spill light from the gaps, because all barn doors, when they have that hinge, you do have to have a gap for the hinge as it opens and closes. And by putting this fabric cover over these gaps, you will allow it to minimize light leak, especially because the beam angle of the Nova P300C is so wide. It's really important to minimize spill, especially in specific scenarios where spill light can definitely ruin your image. Or you can also use the barn doors to kind of narrow in on your diffusion, so you remove any spill light without having to set up 4 stands and 4 flags. The Nova P300C can also be powered just like the Amarans with the 2-bay battery power station. This is a 2-bay battery power station that can take 2 V-mount or 2 gold mount batteries depending on which model you chose, and it can take up to it can output up to 480 watts of DC power via 3-pin XLR. This is 48 volts at 10 amps, which you can read directly on the box itself. One thing to note is that while this power station can deliver 48 volts at 10 amps, it requires that you have batteries that can do that. So deliver 48 volts at 10 amps. To deliver 480 watts of DC power, you need batteries that can deliver 20 amps of power. So 14.4 volt batteries that can deliver 20 amps of power. If you have high load batteries, you are able to be compatible with pretty much most 48 volt fixtures, including the Nova P300C and the Airy SkyPanel S60, because the SkyPanel S60 has a nominal power draw of 420 at max and a max true power draw of 450 watts. So again, this output is dependent on the V and gold mount batteries that you have. The 2-bay battery power station is not compatible with the 600D Pro via 48 volt because the 600D Pro needs 720 watts, not just 480. It needs 50% more power over this guy. It also comes with a 3-pin XLR cable to extend from the 2-bay battery power station to the Nova P300C or the Amaran lights, and it can is compatible with the lightning clamp, just like the 300D Mark II power supplies. And it has a hard on and off switch and a quiet smart fan to really aid you in really any scenario and make things managing your power much more easy instead of having to remove the batteries every single time you want to stop. Now let's talk about the F10 Fresnel. This is a big boy. I know everyone wants one. I know people have constantly been asking, saying this guy is out of stock, and we all totally understand. We're getting new stock in soon. But in the meantime, let's talk about the F10 Fresnel and why it makes the 600D Pro so great. With the F10 Fresnel, you have up to 29,300 lux at 3 meters at spot with the 600D Pro, or 11,440 lux at 3 meters at flood with the 600D Pro. The F10 Fresnel uses an industry standard 10-inch Fresnel, which means it is a 250 millimeter or 9.84 inch Fresnel. This is matching the Airy standard that Airy uses for the Studio 2K and the T5. Uniquely, like for our Fresnels, the F10 Fresnel uses a dual optical design, which is optimized for the 600D Pro, which means that there is a rear element, it's a rear aspherical element at the back of the F10 Fresnel that takes the light from the 600D Pro and optimizes it for the diameter of the F10 Fresnel and allows us to output much more efficiently. It has a 15 to 45 degree beam angle and is compatible with drop-in barn doors like the F10 barn doors, but it can also use 13-inch scrims due to the size of its accessory slot. So when we're talking about F10 Fresnel in comparison to other fixtures, this is what it looks like when we're comparing it to 2K fixtures with the 600D Pro. I talked about this last time in the live stream, so I'm going to breeze over this really quickly. This is a more apt comparison against 5K lights or 2.5K HMI Fresnels. You can see that the 5Ks do topple over the 600D Pro and the F10 Fresnel. However, you can also see how close it gets. Of course, the HMIs are brighter, the T5 is brighter, but you get pretty close with the 600D and the F10 Fresnel, and this is in flood. In spot, totally fair, the T5 and the Air T25 are going to blow the F10 Fresnel out of the water just because how LEDs are more optimized for spot for wide floods, whereas you can get better spot output out of a point source tungsten or HMI light. With the F10 Fresnel, you can use F10 barn doors. These are drop-in barn doors designed for the F10 Fresnel. It has an 8-leaf barn door design, which means the helper flags on either side of the side flags that makes it so you can close and open up the shadow that you're trying to create and have more control over the light coming out of the F10 Fresnel. You might say that, Brandon, why are these barn doors so big? And it's because they're sized to properly shape a 10-inch Fresnel. If you have a 10-inch light source, you also need big barn doors to be able to cut that light. Otherwise, it's not really going to do anything. The F10 barn doors, just like the modern version of the chains that come with old tungsten lights, it comes with a safety cable loop that you can attach to your light. It also comes with a negative reflector, just like the old Aputure barn doors, which is a black reflector dish that minimizes the size of the light source by keeping the light source small and not adding any reflection. This results in sharper shadows and also has a 13-inch drop-in accessory slot for the barn doors or for scrims. But basically, this is also used as an adapter for the F10 barn doors to go directly onto the 600D Pro if you don't have the F10 Fresnel. Now let's talk about the Fresnel 2X. This is the upgrade to the original Aputure Fresnel, but it's been long in the Aputure product line, optimized for the 120D Mark II, but also still fantastic for the 300D Mark II and the 300X. With the 300X, you could see these super high lux readings at 9,500 lux at 3 meters or 5,000 lux with flood. And with the 300X, you're getting 7,000 lux or 3,400 lux. And with the 120D at 1 meter, you're getting 67,000 lux at spot and 23,000 lux at flood. Again, this is 1 meter versus the 3 meters. You can also see the 1 meter comparisons on screen as well. The Fresnel 2X has a 5.5-inch diameter Fresnel lens and also is the first Fresnel lens that we use this dual optical design with this aspherical element that's optimized for the 120D. It has a beam angle of 12 degrees to 40 degrees and started that helicoid focusing system that is also present in the F10 Fresnel. Basically, all you got to do is spot and flood the Fresnel by rotating the design just like a lens ring, and you're spotting and flooding the Fresnel. It's compatible with the Aputure barn doors and any other 7-inch photography accessories, which the barn doors are compatible with. Aputure barn doors is going into that right now. This is another thing that we did not discuss last time because it has that white stripe. It is designed for the Aputure Bones mount point source lights. It is compatible with Aputure reflectors and the Fresnel 2X. So these are 4-leaf barn doors. They have a velvet lined interior to help absorb more light. And they have a magnetic gel holder system that comes with it as well. Basically, there are magnets built into the frame of the barn door, and this gel holder, which has ferromagnetic material in it, can just slot right into there while holding the colored gel that you want to attach to the barn doors. This means that you can drape the gel over the barn doors, or if you want to keep them nice and tidy, you can magnetize them to the interior. It also comes with a 30-degree honeycomb grid, which helps you to even further narrow your beam angle. And of course, comes with the reflector dish, which is a black reflector dish meant to minimize the size of the light source, but also adapt the barn doors directly to the light fixture if you do not have another source that you want to be using. The barn doors, just like the F10 barn doors, are made from aircraft grade aluminum and are super, super, super durable. Spotlight mounts. Okay, we're nearing the end. I can feel it, but this is definitely one of my favorite products. This is something that you don't realize that you need a lot when you're working on set, because often what you find people doing is working with soft light modifiers, with light domes, with lanterns, and they forget that hard light modifiers can be really, really helpful on set, just like with the Spotlight Mini Zoom that we'll be talking about in a bit. But with the advent of CRLS reflector technology and different reflectors on set, and even using foam core and just bouncing light into very specific places, the spotlight mount is really, really powerful because of how it allows you to shape light with the shutters. This is the first professional level Bones mount spotlight projector adapter that is pretty much on the market, that is designed completely in-house by us. It's large and it's super durable, but it includes all the features that most of the features that you need out of a professional level spotlight. So it has interchangeable lenses of 19 to 26 or 36 degree beam angle lenses. These are adjustable focus by unscrewing and tightening the knob on the side, and these are precision chromatic aberration-free optics that we designed ourselves. We also have a rear aspherical collimating lens on the back of the spotlight mount. This allows it to take the flat chip light source, the wide beam angle of a bare COB, and collimate it so that it can go into that 36, 26, or 19 degree beam angle spotlight lens. It is compatible with Aputure Bones point source LED lights, monocolor LEDs, and color blended single source LEDs. This is an important distinction, which means it is compatible with the 120D, the 300D, and the 600D, and the 300X, but it is not compatible with the Amaran 100X and 200X because they're not color blended single source lights. The build of the spotlight mount is made from precision grade die cast aluminum alloy. It has precision chromatic aberration-free optics, like I mentioned before, and accepts B-size gobos, which is very common in the industry. It does not include an iris. It says it includes an iris. That is incorrect. The iris is sold separately. It has a gobo holder and 3 B-size gobos, and it has enhanced durability because of that die-cast aluminum alloy, interchangeable lenses. There's iris and gobo slots built into the product. It has 4 leaf shutters that are also built in there, always there. You don't have to add and swap different accessories to get an iris. You don't have to swap out to get shutters. You don't have to swap out to get gobos. They're always there to work together. It also has a heavy-duty disc brake locking yoke, and it has a heavy-duty junior baby pin. This is junior baby pink. Wow, I was tired when I wrote this presentation. This is the first Aputure product to utilize the dual junior baby pin. Keep that in mind. Another hint I'm gonna give you. So this is the spotlight mount recap. Again, does it still say junior baby pink? It does not. So I wrote it correctly. I wrote it correctly here, but not over there. As you can see, this is getting long and we're getting tired, but we're gonna keep powering through this. Let's get it, let's go. Cool. Along with the spotlight mount, of course, you have this 18 leaf iris. This is a product that's sold separately. It is not included with the spotlight mount. It adjusts the diameter of a spotlight's illumination circle, and with its 18 leaves, it has a super circular round design. You might notice from using camera lenses, if you have the more leaves you have in your aperture, the more round your bokeh is going to be. The fewer leaves you have in your aperture, the more square or shaped, hexagonal or octagonal your bokeh is going to be. So using 18 leaves, we try and get as round of a shape as possible. It is compatible with the Aputure spotlight mount. It is made out of aluminum alloy as well. 10 gobo kit. This is something we released last year, and that sold out really quickly over Black Friday, if I remember correctly. These are 10 gobos that are made, 10 B-size gobos that we made that are also compatible with the spotlight mount. This includes church window, dot, fire, fireworks, grill, lightning, linear, modern window, ripple, and scatter. These are 86 millimeter. That is the diameter of a B-size gobo. You might want to take note of these gobos. Again, another hint for the test. I'm feeling generous. Okay, Spotlight Mini Zoom. Again, we talked about this last week, but we'll talk about it again today because we're releasing it in 1 week. This is a zoom projection lens accessory for the Aputure LS60D and 60X. These are when you're using them with this spotlight mount, you want to set them to full spot for the best results because it gives you the most parallel beams. Just like the collimating lens in the spotlight mount that takes the wide angle from the COBs and puts it narrower, you want the beam to be super narrow going into the Spotlight Mini Zoom because the Spotlight Mini Zoom is going to invert the light and basically even out everything as much as possible, which gives it that 80% edge-to-edge consistent illuminance that you see at the bottom line on this slide. This zoom, because this is a zoom lens, you do not need to change your lenses. It is a 15 degree to 30 degree beam angle lens, and it has a 2x optical zoom. So that's 15 degrees to 30 degrees, that's 2x optical zoom. And of course, it has adjustable focus and it accepts M-size gobos. And with that zoom, you have a 1.4 meter to 2.8 meter illumination circle at a distance of 5 meters from your subject. So speaking of that M size, I'm not going to get there yet. Yeah, speaking of the M size gobos, it includes an M size iris, a gobo holder, and 15 M size gobos are included in the kit. Yes, we include 15, including a little aperture gobo, which you see on the back wall here. This is the Spotlight Mini Zoom right here with the L60D, showing you the aperture logo, which is an included gobo. I said that several times, so hopefully you remember. Not that it's important or anything. It's not on the test. I guarantee that. The Spotlight Mini Zoom is also precision build, has precision chromatic aberration-free lenses, has an internal zooming mechanism, so that means the lens doesn't extend when you're zooming. It only extends when you're focusing. When you're zooming it, it is basically stays in the same place, just like with a 7200 zoom lens that people use a lot for photography. Has enhanced durability from that die-cast aluminum alloy and electric static powder spray, and has a rosette-style locking yoke on it, just like the 60D, 60X. This is to keep the size of the Spotlight Mini Zoom down while still making sure that it's super stable for use in any scenario. If we use a disc brake locking yoke, the size would be a decent chunk bigger. But let's put this A that was so carefully placed on the background and that I just shattered the illusion of in such a short period of time. There we go. Back where it needs to be. Cool. Here's a recap of the Spotlight Mini Zoom. We're nearing the end. I can feel it. Cool. And let's continue. Third-party modifiers. This means we are near the end. Third-party modifiers. Here is DOP Choice, one of the best quality industry standard lighting modifier manufacturers in the filmmaking world. In the US, they are represented by TRP Worldwide, but the person who makes the modifiers is DOP Choice, and they do use TRP Worldwide licensed diffusions. So this includes, for the Nova P300C, they make a snapbag and snap grid and a rabbit ears adapter for the Nova P300C. So that's a 70 by 60 centimeter snapbag, a 70 by 60 centimeter snap grid for the snapbag, and a 40-degree snap grid that fits over the Nova P300C directly. They also make a rabbit ears adapter, which allows you to use their rabbit ear system, which is basically their universal speed ring system. It allows you to use 6 different snapback softboxes, 6 snapback softboxes available for the rabbit ears. This is a tongue twister that I didn't realize I wrote in here. So include the snapback. Wow, the rabbit ears speed ring adapter is compatible with the Octabox 7, the Snapback Octa 3, Octa 5, Octa 7, the Snapback Medium, Snapback Lantern 3, and Snapback Lantern 5. With the rabbit ears adapter, DOP Choice also went a mile beyond, and for the 600D, you can see on the page right here, they made a double Bowens mount to rabbit ears adapter. This allows you with 2 600Ds to get 1200 watts of daylight power inside one of those large DOP Choice softboxes with super sturdy yokes to kind of hold both of them at the same, hold the whole frame at the same time. This allows the 600D Pro, the 300Ds, and the 300Xs to all be compatible with these DOP Choice modifiers. And rabbit rounders are another type of modifier they made specifically for Bowens mount. So they got into the Bowens mount game, creating super high quality softboxes for Bowens mount, including the Snapback Medium, which is a rectangular softbox, and the Snapback Octa 5. These pair really well with the 600D Pro. Chimera Lighting is another manufacturer. So take note. I'm going to go back here real quick. Double Bowens bracket. Take note. Chimera Lighting, which is another industry best quality industry standard manufacturer of LED lighting and tungsten lighting and HMI lighting, all film lighting modifiers, also makes modifiers for several Aputure lights, including the pop bank for the Nova P300C, which is roughly the same size as the softbox for the Aputure softbox for the Nova P300C. They also make photography and all of their speed ring style softboxes. As you can see, my speech is really deteriorating. All of the speed ring style softboxes are also compatible with the 120D, 300D, and the 600 series of LS Lightstorm lights, because with all their speed ring style softboxes, you can get a Bowens mount speed ring. In fact, there are some of their softboxes that are compatible with their double header bracket, where you can put 2 Bowens mounts in there, making it another lighting modifier manufacturer that has a double Bowens mount speed ring attachment. The Chimera Lighting also, I didn't list it on here, also makes a small pop bank for the Amaranth F7. So if you need a little softbox for that guy, Chimera has you covered. Moving on, we have Honey Crates, which is another best quality industry standard lighting modifier manufacturer. Wow, how can all of these lighting modifier manufacturers be best quality industry standard manufacturers? It's honestly just because we like working with them. We love working with them so much. They create incredible quality materials and products, and it's really a joy to work with manufacturers who really get it and who want to serve the lighting industry. Honey Crates makes 2 accessories for Aputure products. They're both for the Nova P300C. One is a 50-degree honey crate. These hexagons they use ensure that there's a tight fit and a tight structure to everything. It also supports 360-degree rotation because they tapered the front end of the honey crate so that when you rotate the Nova, you can still rotate it 360 degrees with the honey crate on it. There's also a space box that they created, which is a 16-inch depth and interchangeable targets. The target is the bottom portion of the space box where the light will shine directly onto. You can change that out for full grid, half grid, or quarter grid. Or if you want to have something specialty made by Honey Crates, I'm sure Danny can hook you up there. And also has lightweight adjustable skirts that you can adjust with zippers and hook and loop fabric. Again, repair centers around the world, we've really expanded our reach. In LA, right behind me, there's a repair center right here where we take care of a lot of our customers' needs. In Singapore, we have another repair center. In Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, we have a European repair center. And of course, in Shenzhen, China, we have our lead repair center. And with that, this has been super long. It's been about 2.5 hours of ALC training, some of this going through really, really quickly. Welcome to the A-Team. I hope all of you are Aputure experts. Ian will start sending out the link for the 100-question ALC test now. Please go out there, study, take a break, get your MC, and some of you may even be eligible to win the MC12 Light production kit. And with that, let's end off here. See y'all later.